you want to read the resolution? Thanks. Or do you want to read the resolution? I didn't mean to. All right, it's 5:30. All right, welcome. It is 5:30. I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Oshtemo Charter Township regular meeting of February 10th, 2026. And at this time, I invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have remote location identification for remote attendance. I see all members of the board are present, so there is no need for remote location identification. We'll move to item 4, which is Township Mission, Vision, and Core Values. And I invite a member of this body to share the core value.
Core value, value-conscious decision-making.
Thank you, Trustee Ford. Next, we move to item 5, approval of the agenda. I have a couple of changes, but before I move forward with those, do I have any other trustees wanting to make changes to the agenda? Okay, then I have 2. Under the consent agenda, item D, memo regarding budget amendment for IT website update. We will strike that for this evening and bring it forward at a future meeting. And for item 14, topics for board discussion, provided for you a draft memo just for board discussion, considering moratorium on data centers. There will be no action on that item. It is merely discussion. All right. So those are the 2 changes I have. If there's any discussion, I'd welcome that. Otherwise?
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
Support.
A motion from Trustee Sikora, support from Trustee Ford. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we'll move to public officials and community partner updates. I see we have our State Representative Matt Longjohn with us, as well as our County Commissioner. So you guys can, I guess, arm wrestle. Or Matt won. Okay. Okay, flipped a coin.
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Supervisor Bell, members of the board. Not a resident of Oshtemo, but state representative for 40th House District. I just wanted to get in front of everybody today. Tomorrow is the kickoff to the budget process, and the governor will be introducing the executive recommendation for the state's budget for fiscal year 27 tomorrow. But we already know a few things, and I wanted to call a couple things to everybody's attention. First of all, it's going to be a tough budget. We've got, because of things like tariffs and Michigan's economy, we're getting hit a little harder than a lot of other states. The consensus revenue estimating forecast is a constitutionally required event that happens in Michigan in January. It happened second Friday or third Friday of January. All the state's economists come together and they project what the top line budget number can be for the budget. And for the third time in a row, the revenue estimates are down about an additional $1 billion. So, and looking ahead to things like the work requirements for Medicaid, which are going to kick in October of 2026, we've got a pretty sizable hole in the state budget. So things are going to be a little tough. I wanted to make sure that you knew that priorities that you have to put into the conversation about the state budget, that myself, my team are ready to take whatever ideas you have, and we'll fight for whatever you want to try and put forward into the state budget. It will be a tough sell this year with a hole that size. And related to that, there are rumors of a supplemental budget that may or may not come into existence at the end of March, a close of books budget on the fiscal year that ended, well, 3 days later than it should have, last October. We had a very brief shutdown. But with the close of books from fiscal year that just ended on October 1, There may be some opportunity for a supplemental budget at the end of March. And we suspect that if this happens, that a large part of the conversation will be about things that I know you've heard about, the clawbacks to $650 million that occurred in one committee hearing in one chamber of the legislature that is now in front of the state Supreme Court as to whether that's constitutional or not. But $1 million of that $650 million was tied up in the fire station here in Oshtemo. So again, my office has been in touch. Supervisor Bell will work on whatever we can to advance the interests of Oshtemo Township residents there. Just wanted to kind of give you a little foreshadowing and maybe get you tuned in to the news that starts tomorrow with the budget process. But with that, I'll thank you for your time and have a great meeting.
Will you accept a question or two?
Absolutely. I didn't want to break protocol. I know this isn't a time where you normally engage with speakers, but please.
Right. This is community partner update. So I have a couple questions, but I wanted, does anyone have questions for the representative? No. So I'm curious about, and I only read the story, I think this morning or yesterday morning, about the possibility in the governor's budget about tax relief for senior citizens. I frankly was really encouraged to see that. And you may not know the answer now, but that is one issue I certainly will be following. I think knowing the difficulties that residents have who are aging in place in their homes and as their income changes, I think that would be really beneficial to senior residents. So hopefully that gets some traction.
Yeah, you know, like you saw some news reports about it. We haven't seen anything in black and white yet. I am on the Appropriations Committee, so tomorrow afternoon, myself, Representative Rogers, and Senator McCann, the entire Kalamazoo delegation, if you will, in the legislature are all on appropriations. So we will all be in the room with the state budget officer tomorrow at 1 o'clock to actually see the numbers on the page. What's been reported through Cranes and Detroit News, some leaks early on, is that there could be as much as $90 million of tax relief for seniors in property taxes. You know, there are other things that have also kind of started making their way out into the news, and we'll assess them when we see them on the page. But you know, for example, there's another thing that came out today that was talking about increasing taxes on vapes and on, you know, new types of tobacco products to try and close some of the budget shortfall in Medicaid. But we don't know yet. Honestly, I haven't seen anything yet. Tomorrow at 1.
Well, thank you for that. Do you mind sharing what other committees besides appropriation you're serving on currently?
I serve on the Appropriations Subcommittee for Human Services, the Appropriations Subcommittee for Higher Education and Community Colleges, and the General Appropriations Committee, as well as a select committee that was only formed for a very short period of time to deal with the minimum wage, tax, tips wages, and sick leave policies last year.
Okay. Kalamazoo's lucky to have 3 electeds on the Appropriations Committee. That's very cool.
We'll have a lot of work to do this year. Thank you.
Thanks. Welcome, Commissioner DeLue.
How are we? I'm Dale DeLue, your county commissioner. You haven't seen me before. I love Rep. Longtime. I hate following him. He's such a good speaker and very knowledgeable. Although it's February, the county board's basically only had 2 business meetings so far this year. And there are just a couple of things that we've addressed affecting Oshtemo Township. As you know, and I'm sure you're aware of all 3 of them. But the sports complex, the youth sports complex, has been working with their planning department. They had a couple requested changes, and according to Jane Gosch, even though some changes have been requested and hopefully are in the works, that everything is still on schedule with that. At our last meeting, we approved the resolution authorizing the county to assist with the financing of your sewer project. So we're happy that went through. And also we approved the extension of your police service contract for 1 more year. I know the following year might be a little more challenging, but got some time to work on it. So
Thank you, Commissioner.
open any questions if anybody has it.
I just had a quick question. I was sort of confused on the process for the bond through the county. Does that still have to go through one more meeting, or?
Yes.
Okay, it still has to go for second reading?
Yes.
Okay.
Another thank you to our county partners is we received our $50,000 grant to do the road scenario planning for Drake Road. So
Great.
we have the money in hand, and I think we're already working on selecting where are we at with that project?
We just started writing the RFP, so
The
we're
RFP.
scoping the project.
Great, okay. Also, I do have another meeting later tonight across town, so I won't be here for your entire meeting, but I'll stay for a while. So,
Thanks for being here.
thank you.
Anyone else in the, here with us at Township Hall representing community partners or elected officials wanting to give updates? Okay. Thank you for being here and sharing that with us. Next, we'll move to item number 7, which is the work session. And this evening, during our work session, we'll have a presentation on neighborhood sanitary sewer expansion project update presented by our Public Works Director, Anna Horner, assisted with Zach Pearson, the project manager, Public Works Project Manager.
Is this right? John? Just kidding, just kidding. Plan B, Plan B. Okay, I was to say, that looks very different than I'm used to. Okay, good evening. Like Sherry mentioned, we're here to do an update on our neighborhood sanitary sewer projects. I've been up here a few times, and Zach is with me here tonight to help tag team some of our updates. My goal with what was in the packet was to give some introduction to what we're going to talk to tonight, and just give a high-level summary so that the board and the public could kind of anticipate some of the main sections we were going to talk through. So we are going to give an update on the current status of Phase 1, talk about some of our lessons learned, our opportunities for improvement, and one of the big focuses of that is going to be the communication strategy that we want to roll out, and then we will kind of transition into talking about Phase 2, what the scope, the schedule, and our process is moving forward. This is timely with some of the work and the different approvals we're getting through the Board of Public Works and through the USDA. So we will start with Phase 1. So we did hit substantial completion per the contract, so we're about 90% done from the overall budget. The last remaining things include restoration. There are a few driveway replacements that are going to occur in the Fair Lane plat. Fair Grove is one of the streets. And then we are still wrapping up the lift station in Skyridge. We specifically wait a whole nother construction season to make sure the restoration does actually germinate and catch. So that's why our final completion isn't planned until June of 2026. So that is intentional. And our lift station is so close, but we did have to get a 3-phase service from consumers. There was only single phase in the neighborhood. If you want to get into the details, I now know a lot about conduit sizing for electric services. But we worked through that with them, and so they are going to be bringing that over so that we can actually turn everything on. But we expect all the pumps have been delivered, the control panels. The city of Kalamazoo has been heavily involved with that, making sure that it's going to be programmed the correct way and operational, because ultimately they are the ones that do the service on it. So We are looking at late March or early April for that to be operational, and that will make the entire Sky Ridge Driftwood neighborhood then able to use the public sewer. So that will be coming as soon as the ground breaks. We will have to pave the driveway to the lift station and everything like that. So the Fairlane plat, so that's the one off of Stadium, is complete. We do have people already connecting and already paying their fees and getting set up with their contractor of choice. I think I've explained this before, but we try our best at the end of 2025 or the end of a budget year to try and anticipate if projects are going to go into another construction season, how far we'll be by the end of the year. I'd like to say we're pretty good, but it's inevitable that the weather comes sooner than we planned. And so in this case, for phase one, it was really just, again, that lift station and the consumer's electrical service that didn't get completed, and we thought that would be done by the end of the year. So we're essentially rolling over. We're not allocating new funds, but we are going to have a budget amendment later in the agenda that you will see that is taking the unspent 2025 funds and moving them into the 2026 approved budget. You'll see it as the revenue coming from the remaining bond proceeds from our first bonds that we closed on, and then the expenditures include, again, that last remaining part of the lift station. We won't pay for, the way it's written, we won't pay for the end of it until it's up and running and operational. And there is a whole day of getting to see it start up, so it is an exciting event. And again, there'll be a little engineering oversight as we get through those punch list items, and we do have to pay for that consumer's electrical service. Okay, John, I don't know if this worked. Okay, I really tried to up my ante this time without just pictures, but I have a video. So some of the takeaways for us, we did summarize how much of an investment and what this brought to the community. So we have 3 new miles of sanitary sewer. It's collection, part of the collection system. We have 2.3 miles of new roads that are at the brand new start of their life cycle. They have new sand, new gravel, new pavement. There's the 166 new connections between the 2 neighborhoods, and then some traffic calming. Currently, we do have 2 more speed humps and 1 speed table to put in on Green Meadow. Those weren't a part of the USDA project. We had the road commission come and repave it first, and then we will put those in first thing in the spring. So they were all approved as part of that project with the road commission, but we only got the ones in the neighborhood where the sewer went installed in 2025. All right, hopefully I can get this video to work. My takeaway from construction, so I've been doing road civil engineering construction for about 10 years, and I know it can be intimidating the first few times you see a 20-foot deep hole, but for the most part, I would say this project went very well. When you can stay on schedule, when you can not have any major unforeseen things, the soils were what we were expected, the contractor was very responsive. So from a construction standpoint, it went well. Part of what I want to show is that they had this unique process with this conveyor belt that I've never seen, and I sent to a lot of my colleagues that have been doing road construction for 20 years, nobody had ever seen. So it was kind of like this, innovative system, even though I think it did break down a time or two. So it might not have been brand new technology, but sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel if it works. And the real benefit to it was that it had these tires on either side, so we didn't actually have to excavate as wide. And when the excavator scooped out the initial bucket, if you will, of material from the road, and they put it on this conveyor belt, it mixed the soils kind of organically, if you will, through the process, instead of having to load it into a truck, have the trucks run through the entire neighborhood, which would have been very loud and disruptive. And then as it falls into the trench, you'll see, it mixes it up very well so that we had a really good material to backfill and rebuild the road with. Again, fingers crossed this works. maybe it's a little hard to see, but anyway, the conveyor is the piece across the top, and you can see they have a compaction attachment on one excavator, but it's just dropping material right back into the hole. So the other excavators on the other side, again, they don't have to be having dump trucks go through the whole neighborhood, which can rattle and make noise, and when they're backing up, they beep. So from that standpoint, maybe I was overexcited about how this was going to show up on the screen. But anyway, I'll send it out to everybody. It's super exciting. Again, it was something I'd never seen before. Wasn't anything we asked for. It was just, I guess they only made like 20 of them in the state, and this company happened to have one. So we did benefit from that. So I will move on from the technical construction side. The other big thing we learned about was the service leads, so the new connection points that people are going to have to make. That is the point right at the right-of-way where there are a lot of other utilities. And so the challenge of getting through the gas, the communications, all the fiber, multiple lines of fiber, and then working with the city water department too to make sure that we have the separation that's required between water services and sewer services. So it was just one of those, when you're retrofitting a neighborhood, it's much more challenging, and that did take some time, and we're hoping that we can incorporate into phase 2 some requirements for the contractor to make sure that we can make it as easy as possible for the residents to connect. That's really our goal, is to make sure that the contractor, while they're out there and they have the familiarity with where all these lines are, they get past those so that when the resident comes to connect, it's a little bit simpler for them. Oh, it's just gonna
Can I ask a question while we're going? Sorry. to
Sure.
not Mess up the.
Is it about this video? No, I'm just-
No, the video is fine. Can you go back to the prior screen? I'm just curious, out of 166 new connections, how many different contractors did you see for the private side hookup?
Zach's probably better to answer this question. So again, all these haven't connected yet. They have up to 2 years to connect, but we do have quite a few contractors that we routinely see pull building permits, plumbing permits from the building department. So I would say there's 5 that we typically see.
So we have a list on the website of, I think, 7 or 8 contractors. People typically call the first 3 and get quotes. So we usually see those 3, but I think of the 4 that have already connected, there was 2 different contractors because they both went through and talked to one resident and then said, hey, tell your neighbors, I'll give them a deal if they sign up. So they signed up. Pretty much that whole neighborhood was signed up by 2 people, and what didn't get done already is going to be done in the spring by those same 2 contractors.
I kind of wondered that too, because you do get the neighborhood discounts for plowing and everything else. It might be nice to kind of have something for the residents to compare and, have some kind of deal, but I was just curious.
Yeah, and if they can talk to a contractor or get quotes early enough, it kind of helps when we're going through construction and make sure we're putting the lead in the right place too. So that feedback from the contractor of how they're going to get them connected, then we can place the lead right where they quote it for. Again, just makes it less variability when the resident comes to connect. But yeah, there's definitely a strategy that they have. They like to FOIA the records of who needs to connect, and then they send out letters. I've heard radio ads in the past. So the contractors in the area definitely are taking note, and when they see the projects going on, they reach out to the residents.
It's good, healthy competition right there.
So again, I think a lot of the takeaways and things we learned were less about the technical specs of the project, backfill materials, asphalt types, pipe sizes. It was much more the logistics and how we can be prepared to help coordinate different groups, different stakeholders, and again, try to make the impact on the resident as minimal as possible. It is an impact. I don't want to negate that. These are very disruptive. So that's why we're trying to do what we can in Public Works to minimize that impact. So these are some of the entities that we know that we are going to have to contact early going into phase 2. It was really great to work with the KPS Transportation Center. We have a really good contact there now, and they can help coordinate with the bus drivers and the bus stops and the parents. So that helped. UPS or USPS and the deliveries. We did initially plan to have one central location for all the mail, and then the resident feedback was they did not want that. They understood there could be some delays or they would need to go pick up stuff at the post office, but they were willing to do that. So we have some options there. We have a few waste haulers in the township, and they come different days. The recycling comes different days, and the yard waste comes different days. So we have some contacts with those now too. Some of them have different capabilities. One has like a baby garbage truck, I'll call it. So they were able to maneuver the site a little bit easier. So we're gonna set up a meeting with them, pre-construction, so that they know what to expect. And then we've spent a significant effort trying to think about wear the firefighter helmet, if you will, and understand the emergency response. So how are they gonna, get a truck there? Where are they gonna stage it? Where's the closest fire hydrant? If there's not a fire, then how are they gonna get in with an ambulance? So we've really taken the time in phase 2, especially where there's not as many egress points in the neighborhood, to really think methodically through how we can tell the contractor they can progress. So with that, then I'm gonna turn it over to Zach to talk about communication, because that is always the key of any successful relationship.
Yeah, so the most important part of a successful project is really going to be communication, especially with so many different stakeholders. So Anna touched on some of the key things that we learned, and that was, a lot of that was related to communications and meeting resident expectations. So for phase 1, we had 2 community meetings before the project started. For outreach, we sent out postcards to all the impacted residents. So you may notice that some of these numbers, as far as how we reached out and who we sent postcards to, don't match up with the number of connections. That's because we reached out to all the impacted properties, so people along these routes too that might have had restricted access or had to follow detours. So we tried to reach out to as many of the people that were going to be impacted as possible. So for those 2 community meetings, we chose a Thursday evening and a Saturday morning. We had 38 addresses represented, so that's not number of people. We didn't get a head count. We just went from the sign-in sheet and who signed in from what address. So we did have a lot of couples present, or people came in groups, so maybe they didn't all sign in. But that was the way that we collected that data. So a little hard to capture 100% what the participation was, but I think we reached a decent amount of the residents there. And then from there, once we got started, we did a door-to-door campaign. So that was the tool that we used. We did letters on township letterhead with updates. So we did an initial startup update to all of the affected residents, and it kind of went by street as we approached them, and there were going to be those changes. We did some reactionary updates. Like Anna mentioned, we had some issues with the USPS and their deliveries, and we didn't want to do a central mailbox bank, and that was a response to resident feedback. So we tried to direct them and work with the post office to figure out how they were going to continue to get their mail and what they needed to do for that process. So we hand-delivered letters for that. We had a plan in place for trash collection. Because of the different providers and all of their different capabilities, some were still picking up, some weren't. The contractor was trying to keep up with pickups, so we tried to iron that out. But in the meantime, we did hand-delivered letters for those updates, just to explain how that process was intended to work, how it was working, and how we were going to try to correct things as we went. One of the major updates was for property access. So as construction moved, and you could tell a little bit from the video, but that conveyor belt is about 40 feet long or so. So that is a big piece of equipment. And then you have 2 excavators on either end. So that takes up a good section of the street. And then with that, residents did not have direct access to their driveways for periods of time. So we tried to stay ahead of that and deliver those letters to let them know that you're going to have limited or restricted access for this window. This is what's expected. This is where you should park and how you can maneuver through the construction zone. The cul-de-sacs were especially difficult, particularly in Fairlane. We had to do multiple notices there because there would be points where we passed a cul-de-sac and they had access restored, but then different construction activities started back up and they had to close it back down again briefly. So there was a lot of attempts to get notices out for that. And then paving notices, those are the best ones because everybody sees the new road opening back up. So we did a lot of attempts to try to get ahead of paving because again, you're going to have limited access to your driveway during those activities. So overall, I delivered 924 letters to property owners. So that was our main way of communication initially.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Zach's being very team-oriented here and saying we, but he hand-delivered all of these letters, so he did all the work. I won't even say most of the work, you did all the work.
And that doesn't include telephone calls from
Yes.
residents on top of that.
Right, so trying to simultaneously keep up with all phone calls because there's some people that just prefer phone calls, they would check in. And so right into what we learned, it was effective. Door-to-door did work to an extent. We had a lot of concerns about communication going into it, and we tried to give a lot of thought to how we were going to meet the expectations of the residents. So we did learn that there's room for improvement there. It's not the best method. You can't put a letter into somebody's mailbox as a non-postal worker. Can't really tape it to a door. We don't want to damage anybody's door or tape anything there. So I really was relying on trying to tuck it in the storm door or get it in between the doorknob and the door frame just to find a way to get the letter up there to the people. And I found a lot of times I would see them flying down the road after I was walking back down the street. So I go and stick another one in the door. But it's just not the most effective way to get that communication out. But what really did work well from it was the face-to-face that I was able to have with the residents. So anytime I could tell that somebody was home, I would knock and stop and talk to them and try to answer questions and make sure they were comfortable with what was happening. And that relationship building was really important because I did meet some residents that are very active in the community, very well connected, and they were able to share things on Facebook and get updates out and reach other people that they knew. They would send out texts. They would connect me with different property owners that, for example, in Fairlane, there's condo association at the end of those cul-de-sacs, and I got connected with that, and they were able to email letters out in addition to the hand-delivered ones. So that was the best part of the door-to-door aspect. But what didn't really work or what we needed to improve on was the timeliness. The construction changes daily. There were times where I would get a letter out, and by the time I got back over, I find out the conveyor belt's down, so they're now a day behind, and those letters are outdated. So we're already behind in communication. And then, like I mentioned, the reception rate is just difficult to determine. I don't know how many people saw them. I hoped that, if the letter wasn't there the next time I went, they took it in, or that it didn't blow away, but there's just no way to know whether they're getting that communication unless I get an angry phone call, which is fine too, but then, we can talk through those issues at that time.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Is there a way to put something on our website that's just a specific portal for updates? Because I understand, like you said, the conveyor breaks down and now everything is shifted to a different date. Like, if we're going through the trouble of putting these flyers and whatnot, maybe we could say, hey, these things sometimes happen. Please check this site for daily updates.
That is a good point. I didn't add a bullet for that, and I regret that now, because about partway through the Skyridge and Driftwood area, we started a Phase 1 tab on the website, and we did start a news and updates section. And on one of those letters that did go out, we did say to go and check this website. We're going to try to update it weekly with these construction activities, or more frequently if needed. So we did add that in there. And we did try to advertise it through those letters that came afterwards, but we did learn that partway through the process that would be easy too. So, so as far as reliable communication and just direct feedback from residents, we wanted to improve that level of service. So as a resident of Portage that went through a construction project and didn't get very much communication at all, I have been through that, and I know what level of service I expect and then what the residents expect now from that face-to-face with them. So what we want to try to overcome here is just doing the door-to-door letters alone. That's not as effective, but it is still important, at least as an initial effort. And then Rich with Media and Communications for us was able to provide some statistics here that just back that up, is that the direct mail, which is technically what we're doing, has a very low response rate, and in our case, likely a low receipt rate. Email is slightly more effective, but that is just not a tool that we used at all. And SMS and text has the most effective rate for reaching people with this information. So that was some of the analytics that we looked at as far as communication. So for phase 2 tactics, what we're thinking is the best option to kind of pair with that door-to-door efforts is SMS text messaging. The programs that we've looked at, and there's 2 separate vendors that have these capabilities. They can do a geo tool, so we can collect phone numbers and then send out messages to directly those affected residents. If we are going to be moving down Ramblewood, and we can send messages to that effect to just those residents that have signed up for that information. We can do scheduled alerts for when an intersection may be closed, and it's all opt-in. So this is only going to be for affected residents and property owners. That's our target. That's all we want to talk to. That's the only people we want to reach, and they will have the option to opt into that communication. So it's elective. As far as costs for those programs, they weirdly both came to about $9,000. So those 2 vendors that we've talked to had almost identical bids or prices, and we anticipate that the sewer fund will cover that all with the public education budget if that's approved. So then what we're planning now for phase 2 as far as community meetings, I think we're going to have to double up on our efforts here, specifically in Westport. That's such a big neighborhood with so many effective residents. In order for us to do effective presentations, I think we're going to have more opportunities so that we're not overcrowded, and then residents still have the opportunities to ask the questions that they want, because we do try to. Another thing that we learned is that the presentation for those meetings is more effective, and then follow-up Q&A, so we can have a more effective meeting if we spread those out and have multiple meetings there. So, and again, we're anticipating sending out 730 postcards for that. That includes all of the people that will be connecting, and then some affected property owners that aren't necessarily getting new sewer. So this is what it would look like if we repeated just the door-to-door campaign. 3,600 letters going out, 127 staff hours. That's not a joke about the movie. It was just a rough estimate based on what I thought it would take to walk around, and then assuming I would spend roughly 15 minutes talking to a number of the residents throughout there. So that's a lot of letters to print and hand deliver. And like I outlined already, that's not the most effective method there. So what we're proposing, we'll do a pre-start door-to-door campaign. I will hand deliver letters to all those impacted properties to try to get that initial kickoff going. And then we're estimating, if both adults at each property sign up, it'll be 2 text messages for each action that we have here as we're going. For each of these different construction activities, and that came out to about 35,000 plus text messages over this course of the construction. And then in addition to that, I typically am on site for at least an hour every day during the project, so residents can flag me down and ask me questions as I'm out there. We also have our resident inspector that's available on site. And then, of course, phone and email too. I try to respond to those, all those messages same day as much as possible because they are important activities. And the last thing I want is somebody coming home from work and finding that they can't get into their driveway and then they have groceries. So want to be proactive and get that information out ahead of time so that we're not reactive there. And that's Anna's slide. So I'll open up for any more questions on this part.
So just a reminder for the board, we discussed this during budgeting, and we did not put money in the budget in a line item, blue item way to do SMS texting because the board wanted more information. And so Public Works and Media and Communication moved forward with that, and so this is where you have the information and the proposal before you.
How do you get the difference between someone who's the property owner versus someone who's living there? Or do you, if it's somebody different, do you get information to both?
So our GIS system, it has the property owner and we send it to the physical address of that property too. So it has the property owner's information. So if it's a rental, we will send a notice to that property owner at their listed address, and then we send it also to the physical property. So we are trying to reach both the renter and then the property owner too.
Thanks. I think if I recall correctly, I attended both of the meetings that you did for the last project, the Thursday and the Saturday, and I wanted to compliment both of you for, from the Thursday meeting to the Saturday meeting, having listened to the feedback from the room from the first time to and then incorporating a bunch of those concerns in the presentation for on the Saturday meeting. In particular, I believe that was the time when the internet went down and you didn't have access to your entire slides or whatever to make a presentation, so you pivoted and worked around. It was just wonderfully done, and everybody appreciated it who attended it, and I just wanted to comment and compliment you on your ability to do that. And all the things that you've printed here and said that you've done, I know went over very well, and everybody appreciated that, and you did a fabulous job.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Zach on this particular part of the project? We will, we're not taking, this is just work session presentation time. We will continue and have more discussion and consideration later. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Zach. Thanks, Rich.
Yep, Rich has been helping us vet our language as well and give that important industry feedback on what is going to work the best. I do, again, want to emphasize that Public Works is always available. I think the importance of having, using a tool like the SMS or text, the efficiency that we can gain just allows us to do more communication then, because we are available then to answer phone calls, update the website, and keep working towards all the other construction activities that people might have questions on that aren't just on this project. So we're really hoping that this is a way to use different tools to reach people, kind of meet them where they're at, and then, continue to raise the bar for service in other areas as well. Maybe Public Works is like the talkative department. We were happy to have anybody to call, stop by, please ask us your questions. All right, so from there, we're going to talk about then the Phase 2 scope. The maps were included in the packet. I know we've talked to the board and the public before about how we restructured Phase 2 and the items that we look at to prioritize when we're deciding on how to restructure a project. So we really did prioritize the neighborhoods. There were some other segments in Phase 2 that were looking kind of at the long term about where we anticipated development so that it was ready to be connected, and we wouldn't be in this case again. But at this point, we've really prioritized the neighborhoods that have the most residents that need a long-term solution, and then coordinating with the road reconstruction as well, so we can optimize the dollars and the opportunity that we are while we're impacting people. So now we have our contracts, we're kind of calling them contracts C, D, and E. Again, this is depicted on those maps, but we have Country Club Village, Westport North, oh, they both say Westport North. E is Westport South, I believe. There's my copy and paste.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So what I want to highlight from some of these maps is that we tried to show kind of the existing sewer versus proposed sewer. Again, when Zach mentioned, we're going to be impacting residents, so in particular, if we use Country Club Village as an example, there is an interceptor down Lodge Lane already, and it heads further south to KL. However, those people have all connected, but we are still going to be in their way. They're still going to have, if we're trying to get equipment in and materials in, they're going to be impacted. And the other thing I want to highlight is that, again, when we talk about comprehensive projects, economies of scale, being the most efficient we can, we are going to be repaving Lodge Lane as part of this project, even though the sewer is already existing. And we're going to try and work with our contracts with the road commission to do that, some of it, if possible, or potentially our new neighborhood road funds if possible. So that is the best way to get a quality product through that neighborhood. The other thing the maps show is some of those access challenges that we're up against. Again, this neighborhood in particular has one access point in and out, so we have to be very conscious. We have to detail that in our project specifications and make sure that the contractor is aware of that, not only just at the end of the day, but throughout the project, day to day, if there's an emergency. And then ultimately, when we're submitting a permit for sewer, there's something called the ultimate service area. So this also does provide not only these direct connections, but future connections as well for some of the upcoming development that's around this area. It's not the primary focus of these projects, but it does still occur that we will be able to service some more undeveloped land.
We would expect those contracts to be able to be constructed in parallel, right? Or is that not?
Here we go,
Oh,
the
sorry.
schedule, which is a little bit hard to see with this nice coloring I did here. But yes, the goal is that we could close on the Act 185 and the USDA bonds all together, and that the three contracts, the way we're gonna set them up is we wanna be mindful that we have a limited construction season, but we wanna be favorable to the contractor so that we get the best pricing possible. So I guess this is kind of what we would call as like a critical path method, that this has to happen, then this can happen, then this can happen. So if the timing works out for the two different funding sources, then yes, they could all be occurring at once. However, we are gonna, again, prescribe in our specifications that you can't have this ripped up at the same time that this is ripped up. So we wanna coordinate those things. If they're separate contractors, that will be harder to do, but we'll have a good challenge. And again, we're gonna have that. We've been working with our design team to make sure that we are writing that and articulating that in the contract when they go to bid the project the correct way. So we are looking to advertise later this month, potentially into March, kind of as our backup. The reason why they might not be exactly concurrent is because of the meetings tied to the Board of Public Works, which Clerk Farmer, I know you asked about earlier. So the Township Board at the end of December approved the request for project assistance. That had to go to the Board of Public Works, which typically only meets 4 times per year. That's their minimum. So we have to schedule those meetings if we're having special meetings, and then it has to go to 2 county board meetings, one for the committee of the whole, and then one for the regular work meeting, if that's what they call it. So the only reason they could get offset a little bit is, again, just waiting for those meetings to happen. They meet different weeks sometimes than we do, and so it just can kick out the schedule a little bit. if we're waiting for the next meeting. And our goal is really to get projects rolling and get the USDA bonds drawn on, they call it, but starting to use that funding because we are already delayed on it from when they initially obligated it. So all of this charting, there's a much bigger version of this, and we are always looking at these leading and lagging factors. When are meeting dates? What has to be done? Who do we have to ask to draft the resolutions? Who's going to have to review those resolutions? What information goes in the resolutions? So if bond counts, or if the municipal finance advisors have to run numbers, those have to get done ahead of time. So we really have to keep all these steps in order. And again, it's just really the meeting dates are, I think, what's going to be the potential to offset them by a little bit. But it is still our goal to get them closed and rolling this year. There is one contract, Westport North, that has lift stations. Those, because they have so much equipment associated with them, have longer lead times. So that is part of what we're looking at, is maybe we could start the road work in half of Westport and then start the lift stations at the same time in the other half, and then go to the road work afterwards in the second half. So I did put on there at the bottom kind of our Act 185 progress that we've made. The resolution for project assistance did go through its second reading, and then there will be a new resolution coming to our board for the contract for Act 185, and then that has to go to the BPW again and 2 meetings for the county commission. So reminds me of that, like, I'm Just a Bill song, where the bill's got to keep going and then it waits and then thinks people forgot about it, but we are trying to move them along. School rock? Okay, yeah. Okay, so moving on from there, one of the action items we're looking from the board tonight is that we are updating our engineering agreement. So this is a standard industry document. It's a requirement of the USDA funding. It's typical for a lot of other sources of funding that you would get, whether you're using the state revolving fund, things like that. But our original one was signed in 2018, and it had a few amendments. And so it was time for not only the industry-based part of it to be updated, but also an opportunity for us. Again, these lessons learned, we've learned through construction, we've also learned through design. And so we did meet with Fleece and Vandenbrink and kind of outline some of our expectations and what we thought would make the project successful and what we were hoping to provide with our backgrounds. It's not typical that there always is an engineer on staff and a project manager that can help support the project. So we do have new team members from Fleece. You might see them at some meetings or in correspondence in the future. So just wanted to mention them. I think it's going very well. They're very detail oriented. They're helping us talk through a lot of our concerns so that we can decide where we want to put our risk. And then there are some like actual contract terms that we've talked through with them. So we're structuring the contract differently. Instead of a lump sum contract, it's going to be a time and materials not to exceed. That's very much in favor of the township, and that is what I want to see for all of our contracts. And so we've worked through that with them. Premium and overtime rates should just be if it's related to our project, not somebody's overall work schedule. And then the standard and quality of care. There are some sections already in the standard documents, but we emphasize some areas where we want to make sure that we understand that we have the right personnel on our project, so the right levels of personnel, and how they're being efficient with their time on the sites, just like we would expect of ourselves. So I don't want to micromanage anybody, but it is my role to protect the dollars and the product and the quality that comes out for our residents. So that was an opportunity to do that as we were updating that engineering agreement. There's 3 main categories. Again, this comes from the standard USDA or EGCDC documents. They're called basic services, resident project representative, and additional services. And that's, again, how we track their invoices that come in every month and what's progressed on the project, what's going well, what they're working on. And we can look at all that detail through the invoicing procedure that we implemented a few years ago. So as we get into phase 2, a lot of the design has been done. And so we will just be looking at wrapping up those documents, going through bidding, and then the construction administration part of it. The resident project representative, that is somebody that is on site all the time it's like an owner's rep. So they're making sure that the contractor is meeting all the specifications for the testing, for the type of materials, for the size of materials, to make sure that they're following that contract. And then additional services are things that you can't always, I don't want to say you can't always anticipate, but materials testing, we test concrete based on how much you use per day. So we have to just monitor the progress of the contractor, and we do more of the quality assurance testing, and they're responsible, the contractor, for quality control. So if we felt like something didn't meet the right specification, we would do testing to question the contractor's testing. So before I move on from that, the engineering agreement is like 83 pages, I think, long. Jim Porter, our township attorney, has been through it. I have a nice highlighted version of my own, and then we went through with Fleece and Vandenbrink as well. So we are definitely at a point where I am comfortable that they understand what portions of the contract we will be following through on, and the USDA, they have to review it as well. They said if we change too many things, that it would no longer be that industry standard, and so that could delay the project. So we are working within those, again, it's a document that's used across the industry, across the country, but really focusing on some of the procedures we have and some of the things that we will be specifically looking at to make sure they're fulfilling their duties. And once we get approval from the USDA on that, then Sherry will need to sign it. So we are looking for the board to authorize the supervisor to do that tonight. We did put in the budget fees for this for 2026. My recommendation is to keep with those fees that we have in there based on, again, our expectation of how construction will progress. Again, if a contractor says we have no more time this summer and nobody bids on it, then we will have to reevaluate those fees with Fleece and Vandenbrink. It's only fair. It would be a change in scope. But again, the contract dictates when that can happen and if those fees needed to change. So this is, again, some things that we've been through before, but I want to reiterate that enterprise fund is sometimes what they're called, but a utility fund, the industry would say that they should be self-sustaining and that you have enough revenue and cash flow that you have a healthy and resilient system so that you can keep up with the maintenance, the operations, unforeseen challenges that come up when you, if a sewer pipe failed or if somebody was mandated to connect and needed more sewer installed for it to reach them. Those are pretty hefty dollar projects. So we do look at what's in our fund balance. It's intentional that there's some money there so that we can be timely in our response to those things and make sure that sewer in particular would be an item that would create a lot of health and safety concern if it was not properly managed. So we have worked really hard on that even before my time and my predecessor to make sure that the sewer fund was resilient and it is healthy and it is going to be self-sustaining moving forward. On the bottom, you will see our 4 revenue sources, again, that we've talked about. They're the levers I sometimes refer to. We have a surcharge on any usage bill. We have the connection fees that are still at the $7,500 per single family home. We have the road fund contribution. and a general fund contribution. And then the dollars are there, but it kind of gives you the perspective of where those different funding sources are paying back the total debt service. I always try to anticipate some questions here, but, so again, the 45 million is the principal we'll take out. The 74 is what will be paid back if we take the entire time to pay it back. It is often the other USDA projects that I've been involved in before I was at the township, they do often get paid off a few years early. As revenue comes in, again, it's something that we will be always looking at through the annual audit, through the budgeting every year to look at where our fund balance is and how we want to manage the projects and the balance. So there is no penalty for paying this off early. And this includes the USDA and the Act 185 dollars. And this is a nice infographic that we have now to help explain to residents where those different costs come in. Again, something that we're trying to have a few different ways to communicate with people, pictures, words, vocal, telephone calls, whatever it is, face-to-face. So it's just another method that we're trying to use. From we hear back, people get confused about what's the private versus public connection. So as we reach out to these people who are required to connect, we can share this information and hopefully help them, give them a little bit more of a digestible way to understand the information, understand the impacts. Sewer doesn't usually flow that full, but you kind of get the idea from what's going on here. And then it also shows how, again, how impactful this will be when your road's ripped up. It's not to scale, our sewer's a lot deeper than that. So again, just another tool where we're trying to explain the cost to people so that they can understand where the different revenues are coming from and what their responsibility is and what the day-to-day impact is to people, because we do know that with the bills, with the sewer bills and with the connection costs, it is a big investment. And so we've tried to make available a lot of tools to help talk people through that. Again, make contacts with some of the contractors so that we can share that with the residents. And we are always trying to find ways to continue to improve the process for the residents. So that's kind of the end of our update. If there's any other questions, Zach didn't mention, but we did already start the Phase 2 tab for updates on the schedule. So a lot of this information is already on our website so that it can be accessed. And again, I just encourage everybody to please call the Public Works Department, set up a meeting with us, come in. We will go out to your house and talk through what your specific landscaping or your situation might be. And that's what we're here for. We want to help, so.
Does anyone have a question for Anna before we take a break? Go
Yeah, I
ahead.
just had a question on the last slide. Thank you. I'm just curious if you know the percentage, so obviously I know there were some people that were eager to hook up, right, because they needed it so badly, but everybody has the 2 years, in order to do it. What is the percentage, if you know, of people who are waiting the 2 years versus the people that are signing up for it sooner or when it's available? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know an exact percentage, but so we have the Fairlane plat ready now. I think, I don't remember the number of connections offhand, but I did know we issued 7 permits for sewer connection already, so 7 people have either signed an installment agreement to finance their fees or paid them in full, and 4 of those have already connected. We had 2 properties connect before we even finished setting the manhole covers because they needed to. So that the instant that the sewer passed all the testing, they got connected. So there's a need there. I don't know the exact percentage, but they're going to be connecting pretty quickly is the sentiment that I've gotten. I'm getting calls a few calls a week from contractors. They're looking for the lead cards, which shows the connection point because they're estimating those. So that is frequent. Everybody's being pretty active with this process.
I mean, I imagine that'll kind of peter out a little bit as we get into those neighborhoods that aren't, I mean, we've kind of put forth the ones that are the most in dire need first. So I guess we would expect to see that kind of urgency, but.
Yeah, I would suspect it's gonna be kind of like a roller coaster, so we're gonna get a lot right away. And then some people I know that I've talked to are trying to coordinate it with bigger landscaping projects or bigger, driveway replacements. So then that might take them a little bit longer to coordinate, and so we'll, have a little bit of a month or two gap where we might not get a connection, and then we'll get a big uptick again. It also depends on the year, because not this winter, but in previous winters, we've had these where contractors could do the connections throughout the entire year. And they really like the work in the winter, because it's out of the right of way, so they don't have to worry, like the road commission doesn't allow you to do the work in the right of way during, from November to whenever frost laws come off. So that kind of plays into it as well. But we just finished that Fairlane project, at the final hour, so in November, and there wasn't a lot of time for people to get connected. So then I would expect really early in the spring, we'll see another big rush.
Okay, I was just curious, thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Cole. Thank you, Anna and Zach and Rich, for putting together this information. It's 6:36. We will take a 9-minute break and return at 6:45 to continue our agenda. This meeting is
Shut it off.
paused. Where's the word? All right, it's 6:45, and I'll call this meeting back to order of the February 10th, 2026 regular meeting of Oshtemo Charter Township. Next on our agenda is item 8. This is the time for public comment on consent agenda or non-regular session items. So if you have a comment for the board, now is your time to come and share that. You are all familiar with the policy on the back of the agenda, and you have 4 minutes. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Katie Schneider, and many of us residents, have formed our own energy committee, and it is not illegal. We have worked with many organizations in other townships, and we have welcomed any interested neighbors to join us as well. With that being said, I'm here tonight to answer one simple question. When a battery energy storage system incident occurs, who pays for cleanup? The answer is residents do, unless the board acts before something happens. There's been a lot of reliance on Public Act 233, that it ties the hands of the board, and there's nothing the township can do about it. So let me be clear, PA 233 does not remove this board's responsibility to protect residents. PA 233 affects siting authority, where and how loud the project can be. PA 233 does not suspend hazardous materials laws, and it certainly does not override the Michigan Constitution. The Michigan Constitution says that protecting natural resources and public health is a paramount concern, and every one of you took an oath to uphold the Constitution. The MPSC assumes that local government has done its job, that it has upheld its oath and understands the police power well outside of PA 233. And I want everyone to understand what actually happens after a BESS incident occurs in Michigan. We have spoke with the EGLE, and they have confirmed in writing. They typically get involved after possible contamination is identified. The developer can generally determine this nature and the extent of contamination, and the cleanup is not automatically required under Michigan law. Residents are simply told not to use their land or water, and that covers the public health assurance from the EGLE. Some people say the EPA will step in. We spoke with them as well. The EPA is not a prevention system. The federal law does not guarantee full cleanup or restoration either. Take a look at their response to the KL dump. The wells in that area were closed off, and so was access to the land, and that is how the EPA upheld its public health mission. When groundwater is impacted, residents are left with bottled water costs, no wells, and reduced property values, and one remaining option, years of expensive litigation in courtrooms. Once township officials are on notice of foreseeable risks and gaps in ordinances, failure to require safeguards become a local policy choice, and the record matters. And this, tonight, is public record. Strong hazardous material ordinances are not extreme. They are standard risk management tools expected by experienced developers. And local government is the authority that can require cleanup standards, independent investigations, groundwater restoration, and financial assurance, all documented well before a developer brings in an application. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. Right now, the Oshtemo hazardous materials ordinances only requires that the hazardous materials on site be identified. No responsibility, no financial assurances of remediation. There is much work to be done on that ordinance. Tonight, I am formally putting the board on notice. PA 233 does not protect residents. It is your responsibility. It's the oath that you took. The hazardous materials ordinance must be updated now, within the next couple of meetings before approval, not after an incident. I do plan to follow up after this meeting in writing in case there's any confusions or questions about the responsibility to the residents of Oshtemo and a large part of Southwest Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. I'm Rob Morrison. I'm an Oshtemo resident, and I think I've addressed this board before about the energy issues. And it's interesting because I came here tonight to talk about how we don't have really an articulated energy idea. So it's good to hear that there's a committee now locally investigating that. I've recently had good conversations with Supervisor Bell and also with Representative Longjohn. He had office hours last week. And we were talking about the systems and the structures and also the legal and the regulatory situation we have in Michigan concerning, battery storage and data centers and other types of energy-related things. And he described it as, well, they're different buckets. Each one is different, but they're all within one system. And really what I've been seeing is that there really needs to be collaboration within the county, different townships, and then also with other counties and within the state, because the regulatory situation is really, it hampers, I think, townships to deal with this, even though, as Katie just said, we have the responsibility to do that. And it really wasn't, I think, built with community input or input really about safety and health. A lot of what I've seen in the research I've done and others is that it's really about where can we site this, where can we put it, and not about, well, is this something that's going to benefit the community. So I would just like to, second, having some group, I don't know what the best model is here, but something that deals with energy, because I think we need to articulate our own values, vision, and goals for energy, because you can't really take the energy and deal with the issue differently from the environment, because it's all there. And I recently had someone who described Michigan as a peninsula, which I hadn't thought of before, but it's water on all sides. So all the solar and wind power that's coming to us has to be transmitted over lines, probably coming in through Indiana and Ohio, and they're already putting the infrastructure in. So I think we need to really look at what infrastructure works for us and also look at local storage. It's the large-scale systems that are the problem. Small scale, it's very different, and we don't have to cover our farms with solar panels. We don't have to put up big windmills if we don't want to. And I think those are the conversations that we need to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Welcome.
My name is Tom Whipple. I live in 6th Street. I started to do a little more research and like where these energy things are for the batteries. And I was surprised to learn how many of them blew up. And then they must have fudged their way through it and then took and went through, repaired it, started back up. Some of them blew up like a week later. And so they obviously don't have any control of this. I don't think they fully got a grasp on this to really understand what's going on and make provisions to prevent them from blowing up. And there's states like Moss County, California, the Netherlands have had one blow up. There's some place in Arizona that's had one blow up, Missouri, of course, Warwick, New York, and theirs blew up twice. And then they finally, the officials for that area stepped in and just condemned the damn thing. But the damage had already been done. I can't believe that they're that reckless and they're letting them keep going like that. The biggest thing would be a safety thing, but they don't have any way to take and put these things out. They have to let them burn out. Like the one in California had burned for 2 days straight. They repaired it, I think it was a week later, it blew up again, and it kept burning for 7 days. So all those contaminants and everything went up in the air. And the bad thing is people are having breathing problems and stomach problems. So what kind of things are gonna happen like 2 to 3 years to these people? Are they gonna start developing cancer? Probably. And with all this information, I don't understand why people even consider letting these things go in, to our area. I would like to see Michigan actually set an example and say like, you know what, we can't have this. You've proved how reckless that you are with this, and you don't really have hands-on. So what'd you do? Did you bribe the officials to take and railroad this through? And, like with like a windmill, that doesn't have half the dangers of what this stuff does. And then, of course, they have no idea, once it gets in the air or if it gets in the water, how long it's going to stay toxic. And, of course, like, say if one of them gets put in here, one of them blows up, and then people can't stand breathing the air and such, and then what's their house and their land worth to get out of this? It just doesn't make sense. I hate to see the value like of our state going down and even thinking of even allowing this to come in this area. And they always come up with like an excuse like, well, we thought we had provisions in place that would take care of this. And then when they find out it doesn't, then it's like making all sorts of excuses. But the thing is, they probably don't live in that area. What damage have they done to these poor people that've got their farms? What is the value of their houses and their farms at? I mean, like maybe a third of what it should be. But the thing is, like if they can't raise their cattle and that's their livelihood, they have to do something. And I don't see anything good that comes out of something like this. It could be if they actually had some control over it and was able to take and control the explosions, if the fire department was actually brought in and then trying to, find some means to take control of this stuff. The only bad thing is like, like say a Tesla. I was talking to a friend about it, and he goes, yeah, you can't stop it with water. He said they took and proved that. Okay. And one was burning, they threw it like in a lake, and it just kept burning. It burned for 2 days. It basically got to burn itself out before you can even control these things. And then they were showing one of them, like where 8 firemen were actually injured in one of those fires too. They haven't gotten through all the extent of their injuries, but why do you take a chance with something like that? These people take and do a good job, and it's a hazardous job. But that was my main concern, is like, how do you ignore the history of these things? Actually, they're not a reliable deal. They blow up, they contaminate everything, and no one has any idea how long the land's gonna be scarred, or the water. So I ask you to actually consider all that, before, even allowing one of these things into our state or our area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whipple. Do we have anyone else wishing to make public comment? Welcome.
Hello, my name is Kristen Wolf, and I am a resident of Oshtemo. Public speaking is not my strength, so I appreciate some grace. But I just wanted to take a minute to come up here and share that I am a mother and I am a grandmother with children living in this township. My home is not far from where this proposed battery facility is, all this talk. I don't understand the laws, I don't understand the ordinances, but what I do know is this is a horrible idea, and I don't want this anywhere near my home or anywhere in this township. And what I thought was interesting is, as I was out on the website earlier today, I came across the mission statement that says, for Oshtemo, our mission is to advance the quality of life of all residents through a commitment to responsible growth. So I'm trusting that you as the board are going to listen to all the residents and advance our quality of life. And there is no way, I've got to believe, that any one of you can sit up there and think that putting this so close to our homes that we cherish, where we build memories and where we're trying to just have a peaceful life, what it's going to be like to wake up every morning wondering what's going to happen down the street. It's just not fair. It's not fair to me or any of the people in this township. And so I just ask you to please stand behind your mission. It's a good one. It's a really good one. But just stand behind it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Welcome.
Hello, I'm Todd Wolf, an Oshtemo resident. Keep it short and sweet. I oppose the BESS battery storage facility as it does not enhance the lives of Oshtemo residents or the residents of the adjoining communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make public comment? Okay, thank you all. This time I will close public comment and we will move to item 9, which is our consent agenda. It includes the meeting minutes of the regular meeting of January 27th, 2026, the receipts and disbursements report, and the memo regarding the rescue vehicle purchase by Oshtemo Fire Department, for Station 5-1. Do we have any members wishing to, I guess you probably should have done it already, frankly, but is there anyone wishing to pull anything off the consent agenda for discussion later?
No.
I have a question. It says that we are going to be later talking about the vehicle purchase, but there's numbers, consent C. Will we be talking about that later?
No, that's this vehicle was described in the budget and approved by the board in the 2026 budget.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda by trustee Sikora, a second by clerk Farmer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have item 10, which is a resolution celebrating Black History Month. And I would like to welcome Clerk Farmer, if you'd please read that into the record.
Thank you. Whereas African Americans were forcibly brought to the American colonies beginning in the 17th century, and Black Americans have endured enslavement, racial violence, segregation, and the denial of fundamental rights, the effects of which persist today. And whereas, despite these injustices, Black Americans have demonstrated resilience and a steadfast commitment to freedom, justice, and equality, making profound contributions to the social, cultural, economic, political, and civic life of the nation. And whereas Black History Month, a federally recognized national observance, calls upon all Americans to reflect on and honor the history, contributions, and experiences of Black Americans, and whereas the second week in February was chosen as it marks the birthdays of two men who greatly influenced the Black American experience in this country, including Frederick Douglass, who escaped slavery and became an abolitionist and civil rights leader. Though his birthday isn't known, he celebrated it on February 14th. Abraham Lincoln, who signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which abolished slavery in America's Confederate States. He was born on February 12th. And whereas Dr. Carter G. Woodson, known as the father of Black history, founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, established the Journal of Negro History, and created Negro History Week in 1926 to ensure the accurate inclusion of Black Americans in the nation's historical narrative. And whereas in 1976, President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month, calling upon Americans to honor the often overlooked achievements of Black Americans. And whereas on November 4th, 2008, the people of the United States elected Barack Obama, an African-American man, as President of the United States. And whereas on November 3rd, 2020, the people of the United States elected Kamala D. Harris, an African-American woman, as Vice President of the United States. And whereas Oshtemo Charter Township acknowledges that all people are beneficiaries of the history and culture contributed by Black Americans. And now, therefore, it is resolved, the Oshtemo Charter Township recognizes Black History Month as an important opportunity to commemorate the enduring contributions of Black Americans to the history of the United States and to reflect on the nation's complex history and shared future.
Thank you, Clerk. I have motion by trustee Ford.
No, I'm sorry, I thought the motion was
Oh,
that person that just read it.
I'm sorry.
I support it.
Motion by Clerk Farmer, support by trustee Ford. Any discussion on the motion? A roll call vote.
Thank you. Trustee Cole?
Yes.
Trustee Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Chapman?
Yes.
Trustee Sikora?
Yes?
I vote yes. Treasurer Bushka?
Yes.
And Supervisor Bell?
As the mother married to an African-American and proud mom of three biracial children, I proudly vote yes.
The resolution is adopted 7-0.
Thank you. Next, we have our building official, Mr. Ted Hansen, here to deliver a building report. And when he sent me this report, I was really, it was kind of jaw-dropping and illuminating. I think we talked about it budgeting, how busy the building department was. So much so that we added some additional administrative staff to support it. And so I wanted to invite Mr. Hansen to present his report to the board and give him an opportunity to take questions if you have any.
Good evening. I don't see the board very often, so Sherry already introduced me. I'm Ted Hansen. I'm your building official. I wanted to put some figures together for the board. Tried to keep it short and sweet. We could run all sorts of reports. You don't need to know how many re-roof permits were done or how many bathrooms were remodeled, but it's a good indication of how the economy's going. So that's kind of why I want to give you last year's numbers and this year's numbers, and you can see a valuation, and it's usually a little bit on the light side, but it's pretty accurate as to the dollar amount that was invested into the community. And we took a huge jump from 24 to year 25 from almost $8 million to almost $40 million invested in the community. The top graph will kind of break it down into how many building permits, electric permits, and plumbing permits were pulled. And the middle column there kind of tells you the revenue for each permit. So the building department's very healthy, the community is very healthy, and it's from my experience in other communities, Oshtemo is really diverse. We got a lot of money coming in residential and a lot of money coming in commercial development, whereas opposed to some communities like I worked in Muskegon where they just had large projects like a $60 million jail or an $80 million hospital advance with hardly any residential construction. So again, I wanted to keep it kind of short and sweet, but I wanted to show the board some figures that you can kind of wrap your head around that were pretty substantial for the community.
Thanks, Ted. I mean, it didn't quite quadruple year over year, but it's pretty close when you talk about construction value. That's,
Yeah, it's hard to determine because, I came in the middle of '24, but based on my experience in other communities, it is a good indication of how well the economy is doing. And it depends too, because I was stationed over by the lake shore and we had a lot of Illinois, a lot of Chicago money that was, being dumped into the community. That's not kind of an indication of what we experience here as people. That was more of a tourist type situation where people would come visit and then they'd leave for the winter time. So, like again, in my experience, these numbers are really a healthy reflection of the community.
and, I mean, the way things are coming in through Public Works and Planning, I don't expect that we're going to see any significant changes in these numbers, at least in the next year or two, as far as construction.
I think they're going to hold or exceed what we're seeing right here, to be honest with you. There's a lot in the pipeline, and again, this is, this dollar figure of 39 million is, it's not public works, it's not funds, it's private citizen investment in the community.
And when I told you you were going to be busy when you came to Oshtemo, did you think I was kidding?
No, but things are busy, and I can see they're getting busier because there is a lot of stuff in the pipeline.
Yeah. Well, I just want to congratulate you. Just as a history for if folks weren't around, we had a building authority, and then that disbanded, and Ted came and joined the Oshtemo team, and we've had to build the building department up, and I think it's made tremendous progress in 2026, not only just in the amount of output, but also input internally, so really exciting stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ted, I want to thank you for putting this together. It is very informative. I'd like to have an additional way of interpreting like how the economy is going. I always used to use when I was going to work, it was like, are there more trucks semis on the road now, or are there fewer? That was like kind of anecdotal thing that we could get an idea of that. And I would ask like friends who are architects, like, are people submitting plans to make additions or build things? And like, well, the same plan's over and they're just in case, so it's good to see actual numbers on here that it can reference those, and that's an additional way of interpreting, for the regular person, how's the economy really going? Are people actually doing that?
Right,
Thank you.
exactly.
Any other questions or comments for
Yeah,
Ted?
I just had one question. With that much growth, and I felt like this is your preface for next year, you're going to ask for an additional employee. I'm just kidding, but.
You're spot on.
Yeah. With that much growth that we're seeing, what is our turnaround time for issuing permits? Has that increased because of the?
It's, in my opinion, it's actually decreased. We like to tell people, 7 to 10 days to process, but really it's about a 3 or 4 day turnaround. The problem is that when we start getting so efficient, the contractors get to the point where they think they can walk in, pay a fee, and walk out with a permit, and it's just not quite there, but we're pretty proficient. And when I tell people on the phone when they want an idea of how long the turnaround is, and I said 3 or 4 days, oh, God, that's great, so that's the kind of reaction we're getting.
That's good. Somebody asked me that just the other day, and I'm like, gosh, I really don't know. And I just went through the process, but, yeah, that's good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks, Ted.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move to item 12, Discussion and consideration regarding traffic enforcement contracted legal counsel. I'm hoping Attorney Porter, do you want to introduce this topic?
Yes, when I first started with the township, the traffic enforcement was outsourced simply for practicalities. When I was first here, we simply didn't have the ability to do a lot of the traffic enforcement. And so that was outsourced to a small firm for a number of years, and then we had a downturn in the economy, things were tight, the budget was tight. We brought those back in-house, I think sometime in 2008. And overall, it was fairly effective from a cost-benefit analysis. But with the change in how they prosecute things now downtown, it's become, in my opinion, cost prohibitive. In the past, the Defender's Office, and it's now Kalamazoo Defender, they would only take cases where somebody was, a serious offender. But recently, they have decided, and I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying it impacted my office a lot. They decided they would defend everybody that had any potential for jail time. So every driving while license suspended case, which is a criminal case, has a potential for jail time. And so what we used to handle many times over the phone. I would just have a pretrial with the defendant. We would reach a resolution, and I would send in the paperwork, through the computer, and I never had to go downtown. Unfortunately, from our perspective, now every single case has to be brought downtown. And so I may have 1 or 2 cases a week, and I'm often down there now from 8:30 in the morning until 10:30, 11 o'clock for the Defender's Office to go through their caseload until they pull a case that actually affects Oshtemo. And so we went from being fairly efficient to now costing about $400 per citation that we have to handle. In addition to that, it's a loss of time from things that I could do here that I think have a higher degree of priority. And so when I was looking at this situation, we do receive revenue from citations. It's not a great deal of money. It's not what it has even been in the past. And part of that has to do with just, if you do good traffic enforcement, you start decreasing the number of citations you issue. So we don't receive the same revenue we used to. That's one factor. The other factor is the increased cost. So when I was down there the last few times, I talked to Aaron, who is with the old firm that I used to be with, that represents a lot of the townships. She's there all the time, and so I inquired with her as to what it might cost to have her handle our traffic citations, and she came back with an offer from the firm of $250 a month, which would, I think, be the cost-effective way to deal with these issues. We would still receive the general revenue, and she wouldn't proceed to any kind of trial. She quoted us $200 an hour for trial work, but she wouldn't proceed to trial without discussing it with me first. And frankly, with the traffic offenses, we've had virtually no trials. You usually always try to resolve those without any kind of trial. So the request of the board is to allow us to enter into a simple contract, allow the firm of Balcom Thal to take over those traffic prosecutions, because I think it'd be more cost effective.
Jim, I got a question for you. If the township if you, as our attorney, didn't go down to prosecute those, and we don't hire a firm to prosecute them on our behalf, what happens when citations are written going forward?
They would have to be written under county, the state statute. The county would enforce them.
Okay.
But then the county would get the revenue.
Correct. I just want to understand for us as a board, does that make much of a practical difference in outcome? Because obviously having you continuing to do it is a terrible waste of like resources and time based on the numbers you put in front of us. But even if we hire another firm and pay them $250 a month, based on the numbers you presented from the previous year, it wouldn't even cover half the cost of that annually. So I want to understand if it makes sense to be involved in pursuing these ourselves at all.
We are bringing in, I can't remember the last report I looked at, but we're bringing in, I think, around 15, 20,000 a year in tickets. So if we paid $200 a month to roughly, bring in, it wasn't paying for me to be there. We weren't even paying for my time down there. But if we only paid $200 a month.
250.
250 a month and then brought in, 15 or 20,000, you're still receiving some income. The other thing you are giving or providing is at least the ability for your officers to have some direct impact with local council. In other words, if there was something that seriously impacted our community, some kind of major accident, I would expect to be contacted by Aaron, and then we would actually might have some input in how that proceeded.
Okay.
So that's the only difference.
Okay. In the memo, it says we handled 54 traffic cases in 2025, and typical recovery is $30 to $40 per case. So that's like, I don't know, $1,600 a year?
Well,
And,
those are just the ones that went to pretrial.
okay,
If we have a prosecutor for the township, then we can write tickets on behalf of the township and all the revenue.
okay, so this is just the pretrial
This is just the
revenues? It doesn't
pretrial.
include the stuff that just got?
Correct, yeah. So a
Thank
lot
you
of
for the
times you
clarification.
have, probably 60, 70% of the people,
Okay.
they get a ticket, they recognize that.
They made a
were
mistake,
maybe
they
going
pay their
too
bill,
fast.
move on.
They simply pay the ticket, but if we don't actually prosecute on behalf of the township, we get none of that revenue.
Understood now, thank you, that was the part that was confusing to me.
Sorry it wasn't clear.
No, that's okay, I was just, felt like we were just not making any progress, is what it looked like, so no, that makes a lot more sense, thank you.
With the $250 per month, is there a cap on how many cases that there can be? That seems like a very low cost. It seems very, very attractive to us, but it does seem like a low professional fee. Is there any caps? I know it says flat, but is it up to 10 cases, 2 cases?
She did not indicate there would be any cap on the number of cases, and part of the reason for that is she is always there. She has I think 2 other townships that she does traffic enforcement for, and so every time she's there, I'm there. Unfortunately, I probably spend most of my time talking versus actually talking to somebody from Kalamazoo Defenders. They'll come in and you put an offer on a sheet of paper, they talk to their client, they come back, they either like it, they don't, you resolve it. So the active time that I'm working on a case may literally be 10 minutes. And she said, I'm sitting here anyway. She's doing other work on her computer, they come through. If she added one more township, it literally would add probably 10 minutes to her workday on any given prosecution day. That's why even at $250 at a flat rate, she could handle 3 a week and she'd still come out dollars ahead.
So as far as the, because I was just doing the math too, on the $200 an hour, if this ended up going to a formal hearing or trial, that can add up really quickly. Is she talking the time that she sits there and waits, or would she only be charging us from the moment she steps into the courtroom to address that case?
It would be just the trial time.
Okay.
Yeah, just the hearing time. And again, in the last 5 years, I don't think we've had one go to a full formal hearing or trial.
So that would be rare then,
Very rare.
anyways.
And we would reserve the right to make that decision.
Correct.
Yeah, like she wouldn't just decide this is the direction the case is going. She
Right.
would
Yeah,
take direction from Attorney Porter.
the example would be that there is a settlement hearing that I have this Thursday with Kalamazoo Defenders for an individual who's driving on a suspended license. Normally, we try to find some compromise on those. In this case, she was cited for drunk driving a month before she got cited for driving on a suspended license, and I've just said, absolutely nothing. I'll go try that. And that's the same thing we could do. If she found one that she absolutely couldn't budge on, she can always transfer it to me, and I could try it.
Okay.
Again, trying to be cost conscious, trying to use the best resources we can for the township.
You just answered my question.
Any other discussion on this item? This is an item that is listed for consideration before we, well, is there any other board discussion at this time? Okay, since this is a matter for consideration, I will accept public comment on this item. If you wish to make public comment regarding item number 12, now would be the time to do that. I'll close the public comment. We can move into board deliberation or a motion if you're ready.
I move to authorize the supervisor to enter into an agreement with say it, how do you say the name?
Balkum,
Balkum.
Seaver, Kaufman, and Kutchess.
For the purposes of contracted legal counsel for traffic enforcement.
Second?
Motion by trustee Ford, a second by trustee Cole. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We will evaluate that, though, when we turn the corner around the year and make sure it's panning out to be what we anticipate, so. Okay, next we'll move to item number 3, and we can have some continued discussions with our Public Works Director. But this is an item for consideration. There are, if you go back to your memo on page 5, there is some work that we are being asked to do by the Public Works Director.
Yep, so page 7 has a proposed motion about the engineering agreement that we've updated in 2026. Item 13, which is packet page 9 and 10, is the budget amendments that were mentioned through the presentation. The first one is for kind of that rollover from 2025 to 2026. So those were funds budgeted in 2025 that didn't get spent or brought in the revenue case. And then the second budget amendment is for the SMS text message service. We did have some money in that GL line for public education, but like Sherry mentioned during the budgeting process, that was asked to be brought back with a budget amendment. So that's the remaining balances from the 2 estimates we got. Do you want to add anything to those? Okay.
Do we want to, you want to just take them one by one?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So, hold on just a second. Oh, go ahead, Neil.
I was just going to say, I move to approve the budget amendment to reallocate unspent project funds from 2025 to the current 2026 fiscal year for Phase 1 Sanitary Sewer Project, as listed in your memo.
Crushed it. Second.
I have a motion by trustee Sikora, second by trustee Ford. So this is an item of consideration of the board. This would be a time if you have public comment on this item. Now would be the time to make public comment regarding the Phase 1 sanitary sewer budget amendment carrying over 2025 into 2026. Seeing none, I will close the public comment. Any board discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. I'm looking for the one with the,
The fees for the, I think you're looking at packet page 6 or 5. 5
well,
is the
do we
motion.
want to do, so I think there's 2 more we need to do. One is the public education, but then the other is authorizing the supervisor to sign
The engineering agreement, that's on page 5.
Thank you,
Yep.
okay, so, yeah. So we do have a consideration, I figured we'd want to save the communication one for last in case there was any discussion. So the next one is the board authorizing the supervisor to sign the engineering agreement with Fleece and Vanderbrink. Do you have any questions for Attorney Porter or Public Works Director?
I do want the board to know that your engineer did what I would probably paraphrase as holding their feet to the fire. And she did an excellent job of it. So as far as somebody watching out for the taxpayers of this community, it's being done.
Yeah, yeah.
I move to authorize the supervisor to sign the 2026 engineering agreement with Fleece and Vandenbrink within the approved 2026 budget.
I'll second.
Motion by trustee Ford, a second by clerk Farmer. Pause on moving this motion at this time. If there's any public comment on this item, this would be the time to make public comment. Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carried 7-0. Our final item is the request to enact. There we go, thank you. The Phase 2 sanitary sewer budget amendment, including an SMS texting program, is a part of the communication to the residents. Is there any questions from the board at this time for the Public Works Department? Either
Yes.
Zach or?
Go ahead. Yes, I have a couple questions. Is this going to be software that we will possess and be able to use in other situations, such as emergency road closures or other emergency response, or is it just a single-time contract?
This is just a specific use, so it's not a software that we're getting. It's two vendors that we will work through to distribute the messages, so it's through their programs.
So this would be $10,000 for a single-use system that we could not use on any other emergencies or anything else? It'd just be on this road project?
Yeah, I believe these estimates are good for just what we outlined for this project, yeah.
I'd like to speak to that, though. I think the questioning, the way that the Public Works Department and my office had conversations, and then the feedback from the board around budgeting, it was kind of maybe dipping our toe in doing this through the Public Works for Phase 2 sewer, because, I mean, they felt very strongly that this would be a good addition to communication without making a huge investment. The two different platforms count different ways. So one is you get 75,000 text messages for 9,000 or what 9,000, or they were right around the same amount. And then the other one does it differently.
Yeah, they had different methods for getting there. There was a setup fee for one, and then it included like an unlimited number of text messages over a certain period. And then the other one, I think, it was a certain amount of text messages that were included in that program. So I didn't think either one of them were affected by frequency during that time frame, but they had different tiers and different ways that they came to that amount. But we really did approach this as just a pilot program. After some of the budget discussions, we thought that it would be better suited to get some resident feedback on how it was implemented and how it went before we tried it for any other aspects there.
And how do we plan to measure that?
So I am assuming that the residents will be very vocal about that communication. They were during this Phase 1 process and let me know what was and wasn't working. And so when we start this and we get people signing up for it, We'll know by the number of people that opt in. If we have low participation rates, then it's not going to be a worthwhile tool to use. Or if we have a lot of people opt in and then a lot of people opt out, we'll know that that wasn't effective. They didn't like that method of communication. So I think that's the main way that we'll track that. And then, of course, in their vocal feedback to me, they'll let me know through the
And
process.
didn't you say earlier in the presentation that this was already, I guess, if you just if you researched it kind of on a larger scale, that the SMS messages are the most effective?
Yeah.
Overall? Like research has shown, I believe, is not
Yeah,
the
that-
words you used, but.
Yeah, that's what, Rich put together those analytics for us, and just in the marketing, from a marketing perspective, that is the most effective way. That is what the data shows, is that more people are on their phones. That's the main source of communication. They're either getting text messages or emails, and that is where people receive it. So, yeah, we wanted to reach them where they are.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be willing, I'm willing to allow this to be the pilot program to see kind of how, if it works for us the way that research shows that it hopefully will.
Well, we
until
should have
decide
some
about
data
what
back
we're gonna do.
about the progress of it before we go into 2027 budgeting. I mean, that's one thing, because the projects, all things are going forward in the plan, but the projects will be in motion at that point. So we will have some information about, are people opting in? I mean, I guess what my takeaway was in talking with Public Works is that, you know, the letter campaign, that's, you know, kind of an older school way of doing things. Talking to residents, I think, is super valuable.
Yeah, I agree.
But when things change in a moment due to something happening on the site, and then parents, there was somebody that had to get a child to school or couldn't get a child home, I mean, and need information in the moment, so.
Yeah, and I mean,
we're-
I completely agree, and I mean, you think about our kids' schools, you know, we all have that connection, I believe. I mean, at least my kid's school does at Mattawan. Sometimes it's too many texts, so we need to be cognizant of that. But it's nice to know immediately when something has happened versus having to go to the website and look it up, or, which, you know, needs to happen too, but.
Which was another reason to try it as a part of a project instead of just the whole, everything we
Making a
do.
decision on,
Yeah.
what we're gonna do long-term, I agree.
How would the opt-in process be? How will you communicate that? You said you had some difficulties with the door-to-door. Would you still use door-to-door to try to get people to opt into the program?
Yeah, definitely. So we'll have a way to do that on the website with those door-to-door letters. We did do QR codes in phase one to get people to go to the website and check things out. So we can put QR codes on those initial postcards. We'll really push it at the pre-construction meetings, those community meetings. So that's where our pushes are going to be to get people to opt into it.
One of these neighborhoods only has a single entrance in and out. Putting an electronic billboard there will capture everybody pretty much. The other question I had, though, is, as we've heard, construction changes sometimes on a daily basis. Would this number include a cap, and how would we ensure that this did not go over budget with the number of changes that can happen with Michigan weather?
Sure, yeah, that's a good question, and that's, Rich did do some research with the vendors. I told him that he could take off a little early. I thought we might have had these questions before, but we can follow up with him and get an answer to those on how those packages are set up. But both vendors had different packages. I don't 100% know exactly how they set those up, but we were well within that estimated 35,000 text messages. It sounds like a lot, and I think they were upwards of 75,000 even on the high end in those packages. So, and that is assuming that we have 2 adults at every property opt into it. So that is the high-end number already in itself. And I really don't anticipate we would have 100% participation, and then we would send out the maximum amount of updates throughout the project.
I think I was picking up on one of your points, Trustee Chapman, that there's like an entrance, we could put like a automated sign there. The 1 week I covered for Zach's vacation this summer, I learned that there was people like right around somewhere between 4 and 4:20 that I was getting a whole bunch of emails because they, on their way home, wanted to know if they had to park somewhere else or if they could get into their neighborhood. And that was also a neighborhood that really had one main access point. And so that's where the timeliness is. They don't want to wait till they get home and see that board. They want to know so that they can plan, like Zach's example with the groceries. We had one resident that was bringing, keeping a cooler outside with ice and water for the workers, and she was lugging that pretty far. And so she only kept with it for a few days, but it was a really nice gesture. And so, again, that was just something that she wanted to know while she was out and on her way home, so that she could refill the cooler. It was like the hottest part of the summer. But, so those are some examples where people want to be able to plan accordingly, and get that information, again, where they're at. I think what I remember Rich saying is that there is also like a dashboard of who's opened the text messages. So there are people, I'm not one of them, but that leave like 200 messages unread. And so we would see that if people aren't opening them, maybe they're not opting out, but they're not opening them. And then I think the other point of it that was in this slide is that there is a feature that they can like geolocate the phone number. So we could do a first initial blast to everybody saying, if you want these updates, here's your chance to opt in. We could ask Rich, which is better, to just opt in or opt out. And that would be a way to reach more people that might not make it to the meetings or, didn't get the postcard or something like that. So there's that's part of the service that you're paying for, is that they have that information.
One question, one comment. Who are the two vendors that are being evaluated?
And I did not write those down either.
Okay.
Rich has been doing all of that work for us
That's fine.
on behalf of Public Works, so yeah.
So then the other comment would be, my advice to you guys and Rich would be to try to pay per use instead of buying and reserving capacity. It's just going to be a better model for us. Also, professionally, I'm working on building a system like this for a large enterprise to do SMS stuff. So if Rich wants to do any kind of consulting or has some technical questions, have him give me a call.
Okay.
Hey, just one question. I read your memo and it talks about $5,000, but I think your presentation mentioned $9,000. Could you explain the difference in those?
So we do actually have 5,000 already in the Blue Line budget under the public education line in the sewer fund. So half of it already is included there in the approved budget.
Okay, thank you.
Westport has some great hills, though, and some great cul-de-sacs that we're going to be hiking up at least one time throughout construction to get to everybody, because I do think that was, even after Zach has talked about this way of communication, we were still going to be out there in person and want to be able to talk to people and build those relationships, and make sure that we, see what they're going through, and so that we can help manage the project.
There's one other concern that I have, and this is from my personal experience as I live very close to one of the affected neighborhoods. There's almost no cell signal coverage. I have to use my home internet. I believe you're in the same situation. And so there's a dead zone that involves almost all of Westport. And so I'm not sure the efficacy. I mean, once you leave the neighborhood, you might get the message. But there's a very significant dead zone there, because I live directly across the street from there.
I haven't noticed it in the neighborhood. I don't really go in that neighborhood a whole lot, but definitely on 9th Street. There is it's a, I don't know, probably like a
desert.
quarter mile, half a mile section where you just drop. Yeah. That's a good point.
I think it can still be effective, because I hope that most people are receiving the texts at home and they're typically connected to their Wi-Fi and they get the messages that way. And at work, where they're probably connected to Wi-Fi or have better service, and not when they're out and about walking or driving through the neighborhood, because that would not be the appropriate time to read them. So hopefully it can still be effective and reach them where they have good cell service. And I just also too wanted to emphasize, in case it didn't come through, this is a supplemental tool. This is not to replace any efforts, because like I outlined, the door-to-door and the face-to-face time is still very important. It's just not feasible on this scale for this neighborhood to be consistent and keep up the level of service that I expect to deliver and I think the residents expect to receive.
Phase 2 is quite a bit larger project, too. Any other questions for Public Works Director? No? All right, thank you. All right, at this time, I will take a pause. If there's anyone here wishing to make public comment on this item, now would be the time. No public comment? All right, well, I have a feeling we're going to have some board discussion.
Well, so we still need a budget amendment for the communication.
So, right, so there is, in public education, there's $5,000. And she's requesting $5,000 from carryover to go into that public education budget.
Yes. Are you ready for that motion?
I'm ready.
I'll make a motion that we approve the budget amendment for Phase 2 sanitary sewer communications.
Support?
Motion by Clerk Farmer, support by Trustee Ford. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 6 with 1 no. Okay, I think that got us through our action work items for tonight. As promised, going to continue to put things that are coming through the supervisor's office onto the agenda for topics for discussion so that before we set people off internally to do big projects, I don't want them to work on things that would come here and not, or would cause a lot of questions, and the direction is helpful. So the first one is the 2026 township vehicle purchase. And so in addition to the rescue truck, so there are 4 other vehicles that are in the 2026 budget. And then the chief's vehicle, it's not in the 2026 budget, but he talked to the board about it's getting to its end of life. And the board said if we got there, to bring it back for discussion in a budget amendment in the future. So here's the status of the vehicles, is we had some discussion during budgeting about types of vehicles, electric, hybrid, gasoline, and David Cobb, our operations coordinator, has been following the MIDeals website, waiting for the 2026 vehicles to come out. He's on a very sunny tropical vacation right now, so we're happy for him. But as of last week, they had not put all the vehicles up in MyDeal yet. When that happens, we're going to bring a presentation back to the board about what vehicles are being requested by the township staff. Why is this coming now? For me, there's 2 things. I have 2 department heads specifically who are requesting to buy the vehicle that's in their budget. They need the vehicle for work. But then that leads to electric, hybrid, gasoline. And what I want to know is, I think I want to know how would you like to attack that conversation? Do you want to do it? Do we want to talk about it universally? Like, are we going to try to, enter into the hybrid and electric vehicle realm with township vehicles, which I know we've discussed on more than one occasion? I know that there's going to be one department particularly that is going to want to come to the board and request a gasoline vehicle. So I don't want to stall the need for the staff, because we have staff that need those vehicles. We had one staff member in a personal car that went to a site visit last week that ended up getting stuck out in her personal vehicle while she was doing township work, when we have a small SUV for that department in the budget. So, not to mention, well, anyway. So I'm curious about, do you want to workshop it? Would you like to do it in a work session and kind of talk about it? And, because if we're going to do more electric vehicles, then we're going to need to come to a work session to talk about the investment in infrastructure that would be necessary to do that. And I just said a lot.
Can I make it a little easier for us?
Yeah.
Can I bring an electrician down and do a little bit of that work for you guys? Find out what that rough cost might look like to get a few ports installed around the town? Can I please do that, for the love of God? Because we are not moving nearly fast enough on this issue. This is silly. I'm in a position now, I've said this multiple times to this board, I don't want to see us purchasing any more hybrids, any more gasoline vehicles. It's time to electrify whatever fleet we need for bopping around town. We can get some power installed to charge them. Wherever they're going to be parked is where we're going to get a charger installed for them. We just need to have somebody out here to evaluate the setup, see what we need from a power side, and then we decide if we want to do it or not. But until you do that, then we're just going to sit here and spitball about, oh, I don't know this or I don't know that. We got to take some action, and that should be the first action. So if you're ready for it, I'll make a phone call tomorrow morning, and I can let you know when he'll be down here. And it'd just be for, a little consultation, no.
I would welcome that,
Okay.
for sure. The maintenance director is out on vacation all next week, so it would have to be after that, because
That's
Greg,
fine.
maintenance is going to want to be involved.
I'm happy to coordinate with Mr. Fountain on this, but I need the ball to start rolling.
So who are you contacting?
An electrician that I know that has done numerous installs of level 2 EV chargers, which is what we're going to need at least one of, if not more.
Well, and we can talk we can talk about replacing the one at Flesher Field too, and putting in level 2.
That one we should take out.
I think
Get
it's
rid of.
gone.
Yeah,
I think
it's
it's
been out of service,
inoperative anyway.
that's fine. We don't need that one anymore. If there's anything, I don't think we even own the equipment, so that's probably not in our possession anymore.
So, Zach, I will do the introductory email about your offer,
Okay.
and then open that door,
Yep.
and then I will let the two of you take it from there.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Yep, and if Greg has his own electrician, that's fine. I got a guy that has done these for me
think
at
it's
multiple places. and a few other
Placement,
folks.
I think there's, yeah.
There's some things to consider, but ultimately, we just want the cars to be where they are when they're not in use and be able to fuel at the same time. So if that is the Camry that's parked out there, perhaps we have a pedestal there. If it's the fire chief's truck in the bay over there, then we're gonna have to have one there, and it is what it is, and it's a one-time cost, and we all move on. And now you guys don't have to visit gas stations anymore. So we can get there, but we gotta start with understanding what we need to fuel the vehicles.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me, at least, is get that evaluation and then bring the vehicles forward. And, I think out of respect to the department heads, they should at least be able to.
They can state their case,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, okay.
Sure.
But we need that information to make an informed decision anyway. We need to be able to consider the total cost of a project and the total cost long-term. So we can't do that without this foundational work.
And this should be robust, right? Like here and Station 2, I think we should evaluate both sites. If there's other sites within the township that you think are, candidates for overnight parking of a vehicle that we're using regularly, then we should include those too. But in my mind, it would be this campus and Station 2 that should be evaluated.
Okay.
So, sorry, I'm not angry, but we got to do this.
No, this is exactly what I'm looking for, is what information are you gonna need? Like,
Yep.
this is what we've gathered so far. In order to move it forward the way we've discussed several times, what more information are you gonna need? I
Yep.
think that would be
Yeah,
perfect.
and this would be applicable work regardless of whether you're going with a hybrid electric vehicle or a fully electrified vehicle.
I think
Assuming it's a plug-in, so.
the other information that I'd like to have, if we had access to it, is the amount of miles driven per day on average. That way we can make a reasonable assessment of the type of vehicle, the cost, the storage, all of those things, and compare that to gas prices, et cetera. So I need to know the miles driven on average per vehicle to understand that and do that matrix in my head, or
Yep.
hopefully have it done for me.
Good point.
I can't wait
No,
to
I'm
teach
bringing
you guys
you
one
math.
pedal drive.
I'm
Bringing you math,
I'm
God
just,
damn it.
math in public, not my thing, no.
No, that's Anna's.
So I'm going to ask again. I welcome that information, but I think another picture is the cost of repair for electric versus gas, the lifespan of electric versus gas. I am pro-green, but for me, it has to also be a factor of what the costs are to replace, repair, and keep it maintained.
Okay. Okay.
Would you like me to bring that information for you, or who do you want that from? About cost of ownership? I'm asking you.
I mean, I can,
I guess if you're going to bring in somebody that's pro-electric, I'd like to hear from somebody that's pro-not.
So there is
And like-
also,
Bringing an
Like, do they
electrician here, I guess he's pro-electric in that sense, but,
Pro-electric vehicle.
okay.
there is also.
Like somebody that's neutral that can base the differences on a level playing field as opposed to.
In Michigan in
And,
particular.
and there's also,
winter.
you know, as each vehicle has on its sticker the cost to operate estimated by the manufacturer too. So that information is fairly neutral because they have to provide it through the EPA for both electric and for diesel, and they have to provide it for all vehicles. It's average, it's not individual to a state, but it does list on there through the EPA what the average cost of operations are for the vehicle. That would be a neutral source. I don't know if that would be enough information, but it could be a start.
I can,
I mean, maybe a mechanic, like lifespan. What is the lifespan? These are things I don't know. Lifespan of electric vehicle or battery replacement versus lifespan of a gas vehicle and engine replacement.
So.
Or
just
that could speak
like-
to what are you seeing in the,
Yeah.
what are you seeing particularly here
So what
with
we're,
these vehicles versus,
what we are
Yeah.
typically seeing in, like, as EV enthusiasts and folks following that market's segment is that the battery packs and the power plants of these vehicles are outlasting the useful life of the rest of the vehicle. So suspensions and frames and all the things that go wrong with any automobile are the things that take these vehicles off the road. So if they're,
David's already pretty well advanced the situation as far as it's set up and ready to go, and done the research on the My Deal. I can ask Mr. Cobb to go ahead and do some research on the points that you've brought up too, and we can include that information. And
Yeah, I think that'd be good. I mean, there's things that I've heard that I can't verify because I don't know. But like, so I've heard that batteries lose, 15 to 20% of their life every year. And where do we put those batteries? And is that causing more damage to the earth than actually running the the gas vehicle? Like that kind of thing is what I'm looking for as well.
So yes, to answer your question, probably a workshop with information.
Yeah, no, that's good, but I mean, so I don't want to drag feet on this too much longer though, because these vehicles are needed in multiple ways. So that's good direction. That's exactly the kind of input I was hoping to get so that when we bring it back, we've answered some of the questions that you're looking for. Next, we have the Township Hall north side of the building flag presentation. Trustee Sikora, thanks for resending out that information. Do you want to take this one on? We discussed it at Buildings and Grounds a little bit.
Well, I didn't actually send in the request for it to be on the agenda, but
I was
would
going
be
to say, I
happy to do that.
actually, I made the request.
Oh, apologies.
Which, but it was based on our conversation that happened at Buildings and Grounds Committee. So we have the situation out front where we have a flag, we have flagpoles, and we have trees surrounding them, and you can't even see the flagpoles anymore. This was brought up last year by trustee Chapman, and we've had no movement on it, and we didn't put anything in the budget to address the trees that need to be taken down. And we know that that's the first step, regardless of anything else that we do out here. If we are going to prepare the area to be a hub for an event, that can all happen later. We need dollars now, though, to address the trees that are blocking the flagpoles. In addition, there's discussion about the signage for Township Hall. We've got the sign that's at the west driveway, and we've got dollars budgeted for another sign for our internal parking lot back here. So there are dollars budgeted for that, but we don't have anything budgeted for the flagpole situation. So my request to the board is to budget at least $7,500 for tree removal. And then I would also say that we should budget a couple thousand more for landscape architecture so that we can have an idea of how that space can be best utilized. And that's the issue that I'm bringing before the board tonight. Trustee Sikora provided some other information that it provided it again, rather. It was information that had been provided in the past just as I guess, a primer really for the board to be ready for this discussion now. So my goal for tonight is to get a budget amendment in place for tree removal, at the very least.
Yes, thank you for making that proposal. I appreciate that. Just to add on to that, I think that it's important that doing this, just the flagpole area, that's all I was really focusing on, but to have a landscape architect involved to make sure that everything around it is appropriate, that it's, that we can have, and in light of this year's America 250 celebration we talked about, maybe having a little small event there, but make sure it's accessible, people can get in and out, and it's not a trip hazard and everything else, and it's a safe area. That was my main focus for this, and doing it sooner rather than later, so that because of the upcoming 250 celebration, getting that part done. Yes, I also have a concern about getting the sign-in done and the whole larger area as a hub, but my main focus in the immediate park area is to get the area around the flagpole addressed. Which trees are we cutting down, and what's happening? Do we leave the stumps? Do we take them out, and then what do we fill them with? And but get some professional involvement to decide exactly what in that small area, at least that was my goal. In that area, how do we make that look presentable so that when the summer comes, we have an area that we could have a small event out there for the 250 in July.
And as I understand it, this was as a result of a Eagle Scout project, which we're grateful for. If that person is listening, it's not disrespect, it's just that when the trees were planted, they were small, and there was not enough oversight to realize that over the time frame, they would become taller than the pole, and you cannot see. We're one of the few county or governmental buildings that you have no flag visible. So it is not meant as disrespect, but the end result is disrespectful. We have a flag that is completely obscured. So I would support doing it correctly. It's not that we're redoing something. This was done for us. It's just we didn't have enough knowledge and oversight to make sure that these were the right trees to be put in that place. And so I think that I would completely support doing this. It needs to be done.
Right, and my concern was that we'd had a discussion, but then we had no dollars in the budget to back that up. So this would be a way to rectify that. And like I said, I think what we're looking at right now is a $10,000 budget amendment. I think we're looking at $7,500 for tree removal, and then the rest could be used for landscape architecture.
Do we know that how much tree? I don't have a clue how much.
It's more than what you think.
Perfect.
We will be
About
going,
5 trees out there
yeah.
that need to be removed.
Well, and if this moves forward, the maintenance director will be putting out a request for bids for the tree removal.
Yeah.
And we have a township identified landscape architect firm with OCBA.
Yeah, I'm all for the bigger picture landscape architect too, as a bigger project, but again, I hope this isn't contradicting what Clerk Farmer is saying, because I want to make sure we're accomplishing this, we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Is I want the landscape architect to at least start and make sure this is done correctly, and, maybe as part of the bigger thing so that it still fits if we do more, but my focus is really on getting the trees done and that area landscape properly, using having a professional do it and design it while it's still winter out and get it done in time.
I think we're both on the same page there.
Okay, thank you.
Any further board discussion on this topic? I heard a motion by Clerk Farmer.
I was going to, I didn't know if you wanted to do public comment first.
Okay, I'm going to do, yeah,
Okay,
so
do you want me to do the motion then?
No, I'll do the public comment first, so.
Okay.
I try to get them in there first before we do the motion in case somebody changes their mind, but, so at this time, if anyone wants to, discuss or make public comment on the Township Hall north side of the building flag presentation project?
I would be glad to.
Well, welcome to the podium, Chief.
Greg McComb, 9836 West M Avenue. Love it. I'm glad that something's being done because it's needed it. We have a big, beautiful flag up on the hill up here. Let's get another one of those. I'd love to see a huge flag out here. I do think, and maybe somebody that knows the ins and outs better than I do, I think that flag is kind of small for the size of this building also, so I'd love to see a larger improvement. So, thank you.
Time to start
Thanks,
competing
Chief.
with Bell Tire.
I would ask that you reconsider cutting down the trees and maybe have a landscape architect look at what could be done, perhaps moving the flagpoles, that way you can satisfy both interests. When I think Oshtemo, I think of a lot of rural areas, and just cutting down trees is I don't know, it just hits me the wrong way, but I understand the situation. So I would take a look at seeing what else could be done. I know I'd have to go out and take a look and see myself, but if you can avoid cutting down those trees, maybe there's another way to design it so the flags can be out there, and maybe more trees in other areas can be there, because green spaces are really good for community gatherings. If you have a lot of tarmac, then, especially in the summer, it gets really hot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I know this has been a big issue with my husband, and he's not here right now, or this would have been something he would have brought up for sure. One, I love the giant flags. I see them at, was it Camper World or Camper? We love those. We would give anything for one of those in our yard, and maybe that's a Father's Day gift. But one thing to note, I believe we've got either 3 or 4 flagpoles out here. And my husband argues about this because we have 2 different militaries in our family. I believe you can only have 2 flags in Oshtemo flying. So if you're considering moving or taking something down, maybe instead it's taking out 2 flagpoles to meet your own ordinance. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, I believe we have a motion by Clerk Farmer and
I would definitely support that.
support by Trustee Sikora. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I do. That was actually a really good idea, and I thought, wow, I hadn't even thought of that yet. Can we see what it would cost to move the flagpole versus cutting the trees?
So that will be part of the evaluation. There's already been some evaluation on it, so moving the flagpole will be much more costly than what's being proposed here. But I would ask the maintenance director to go through all of the options.
Or even erecting a new,
We talked about a taller flagpole, moving the flagpole. The trees are not native to Michigan, I believe.
That's correct, they're invasive.
Yeah.
They're Bradford pears,
So,
which is all part of the evaluation that the landscape architect would, which is why I kept insisting on having a professional involved. How can we do that? And could we include additional planting to replace those, to make it a nice area, maybe, that's why I wanted the professional involved.
Can you confirm what the motion is?
Yeah, the motion is to approve a budget amendment of $10,000 for tree removal and landscape architecture for the north side of the township hall.
any other further discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Clerk Farmer.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have, before you, this is not an action item, it is just, Attorney Porter came to discuss this with me last week, I think, or the week before, I don't know. We have the moratorium on battery energy storage, and wanted to get some board comment and feedback around doing a moratorium on data centers as well. You may have seen in the news, I think this morning, that Portage is doing a moratorium on battery energy storage and data centers. This is a proactive, no, let me say this. From my vantage point, there are no data center projects even proposed in the township at this time. Knowing what we know, I don't know if a data center has rented land somewhere that we don't know about. But this moratorium, I guess I just want to hear what other people's thoughts are. Attorney Porter, actually, you probably want to speak to this because I know you've been working with planning director.
In discussing this with our planning director, the obvious concerns are, is there even any area in our community where one of these could be placed? It's this not dissimilar to the problem we're dealing with the battery energy storage system. And I just don't want to leave any opening for somebody to come in and surprise the community with some other proposal when we're in the midst of trying to deal with the current battery energy storage system. And there are a lot of issues that need to be addressed before you could even consider a facility like this. The impact on our infrastructure, the impact on energy cost, does it even fit here? So rather than have somebody surprise us by leasing out land without our knowledge, I thought it might be appropriate to go ahead and just simply draw a line in the sand and say we're not going to consider these at this time. And then as you work through your master plan amendments to your zoning, I think this will be addressed at some point. But right now, we're not prepared to deal with it.
So to definitely be in support of this while we're getting ready to regulate it, I suppose. But I guess the question is the planning director ready to start work on this? Because I just don't want us to waste 6 months of a moratorium and not start working towards.
If we get to the end of the moratorium and let's say we don't start work for 6 months,
not a problem to renew.
we'll extend it further. You simply can't deal with one of these without addressing a lot of different issues.
And it's different because we don't have the superseding stuff of 233. It's a little more conventional, so we gotta really cover
I think we
every-
have, well, certainly the state hasn't cut our knees off, at least on this issue yet. So I think we're in a better position to try to address it moving forward with probably a greater degree of authority than we have with the battery energy storage systems.
So yes, I would be in favor of the moratorium. When we do start talking about ordinances for data centers, I think, what I want to see is bring your own capacity from the energy side and closed loop cooling systems. Those are the things that are gonna be important to me, so.
Yeah, I'm completely in support of this as well. I think that we got caught kind of behind the 8 ball with the BESS facilities, and now we saw the result of that. And I'll be the first to say, I haven't done any research on, very minimal research on these facilities, but what I do know is that they're controversial, right? So there's obviously something there that needs to be looked at to see if they are safe to be in our community. So I think we need to get in front of this, which we didn't have the opportunity to do with the BESS facilities, and this is a perfect time to get in front of it, especially with Portage making their moratorium as well. I will reiterate what I heard earlier today and what I said last time, is we do need to collaborate with other jurisdictions on all of this stuff. It's something that is relatively new and being worked out at the state level, at least as the BESS facilities, but these data centers are next, so we might as well get in front of it now, and let's get with the other local jurisdictions so that we can learn together and do it the right way.
Trustee Chapman?
Yeah, I love the general idea. The only concern I have is that this was brought to us very late in the day.
We're not voting yet.
I know, and I just want to make sure that, that we don't push it forward at this time, because sometimes that happens. But generally speaking, I am completely in favor of this. It's just I needed more time to do research and to understand full impacts. But as a general idea, absolutely.
Trustee Sikora?
I just would echo what everyone else has said. Yeah, I think we should get ahead of it. We should enact a moratorium. My disappointment is only that, this is another thing that was thrown out onto our agenda at the last minute, which the public didn't have a chance to even know that we were going to be talking about this. Not that they necessarily would object to a moratorium, but I think for transparency reasons, we should try our darndest not to put things like that on the agenda at the last minute. But I would support the moratorium.
Yeah, and I agree with both of those statements. I'm just, had it not come at the last minute, but I still think it's imperative that we do it, again, in the interest of, again, getting in front of it as quickly as we possibly can, so.
Claire?
Yes, thank you. I think spending the last months being reactive, this is a nice welcome for me, being proactive. And so I would get behind something like this when we've solidified wording and ensuring that it is renewable, if, in dealing with the BESS first, that this can be renewed.
Claire?
I'm in support for all the reasons mentioned.
Okay. So my plans for this were next then, that we will ask the legal department to prep up the memo, and it will be fully included in the packet for consideration and discussion at our February 24th meeting.
We had unanimous consensus. Can't we just move it?
It's not my intention to move it. We have board members that, the intention was just for discussion,
Okay.
so.
That's fine.
So rather than not have what should be a good thing be good, let's just put it on the 24th. All right, at this time then, we have item number 15. This is your time for public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment?
I
Welcome.
am Gary DeBryan, Oshtemo Township. I can guarantee you that a data center will be coming here. I don't know where, I don't know when, but we sit in the middle of the largest freshwater source in the world. And these data centers suck up enough water to probably handle the annual needs for Oshtemo. Now, I don't have all the details, but they suck up a lot of water. They suck up a lot of electricity, and they have to have a battery energy storage system. These data centers have to run 99.999% of the time online. So they have to have a BESS system. So in your discussions, just understand that includes another BESS system if they put one in Oshtemo. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeBryan. Anyone else wishing to make public comment?
Katie Meyer, Tupper. I wasn't gonna speak tonight, but I feel like I always need to, so sorry, I'm up here again. But the data center thing, that's something else that I've been watching quietly. Of course, my focus is on BESS, it will be until I die. But the data center, my cousin's been fighting that over in Saline, Michigan. Bad news, guys, like, we don't want a data center, so I do appreciate getting ahead of the game on this, because we don't need it here. And what I do know is that in Ohio, where they put one, there is an increase of cancer in that area. So, you know, if anybody has seen the movie Erin Brockovich, we don't want our water to be polluted. So that's why I keep talking about the BESS, and the data center that's coming next. So I've already been researching it, just not like I have with the BESS. But with the BESS, I am setting up an interview with one of another Moss Landing resident. This one's gonna be an hour long on Zoom, and he said that I can record him, so I will share that with you guys when I have it. He's the one that I actually asked for the metal studies in the blood, but he said we don't have it. They're just gonna have to wait till we all die from, you know, contamination. So anyway, I'm gonna ask again that we go down the lead that I suggested with Caraco, the compliance engineer, who said he can help us write something to just put red tape all over the BESS. So once again, I'm gonna ask that of you guys, that this is a lead that I really, really, really think that we need to look into. I do understand that the PA 233 cuts us off at the knees. I do get that. But I also know that why wouldn't we go down this route? Like, why would we leave this stone unturned? There's no point in that. If we have an idea, if we have a lead, if there's somebody who's a compliance engineer with 30 years of energy experience, why aren't we calling him? I mean, I offered to fly him here myself. So I just, I keep coming to these meetings and I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, and you guys are probably sick of hearing from me. I'm sick of being up here, to be honest. I'd rather be home with my baby. But I have a lead, so let's do this, guys. Like, let's work together. I think we can do this. I really do. A lot of you have come forward and spoken, and thank you. Kristen, awesome. Porter, I think this is a great idea with getting ahead of the data. I really do. I think we just have to work together, and, you know, a divided house can't stand. Abe Lincoln was right. Let's not be divided. Thanks.
Thank you.
So it's okay if I have another comment at this
Oh,
point?
Yeah.
Okay, I won't take 4 minutes. Well, first of all, I was researching data centers before BESS came up, and so I switched gears. But I will share some research I've done on that, because I provided Representative Longjohn with some sources about that, and from what I've been finding, it's not just the data center itself that's a problem, but it's the way that developers go about getting them in place. And what they've done, I know in Northern Virginia and other places, is that you don't know if they've bought land or leased it for a data center. They don't tell you. Organizations that are tracking data centers don't even know. They say, we can't tell you because it's speculative. And a lot of this is about, well, we need it for AI, but I've also come across research that shows AI is not taking up that much energy yet. And so that's something I'm still trying to verify. So it's a very shaky ground. Environmentally, it's really horrible the way some of these are implemented. But if you put a lifetime moratorium on it, I'd be very happy, along with a large-scale BESS. But I think that we can put ordinances in that would, stop these. And even with PA 233, I think we still have the obligation and right to write an ordinance for what we need, because that whole process to me was not fair or proper. It might be legal in this state, but I think we have to stand up for that. Also, if I knew that the trees were invasive, I'd say just get rid of them. So put some other good trees. And I have one last suggestion, is that when items like this moratorium come up and they're not on the agenda, is put them as an information item, which means that there's no vote. You don't even have to discuss it. It's an information. I appreciate it because, although I do agree with Trustee Chapman that, yeah, we just saw this, so let's, give it some time, put it on the next agenda. But what you can do is you can put items there that are just out there, because now I know that you're thinking of this, and at the next meeting, you can then put it out for public comment, discussion, and voting. That way I don't think you're violating any of your processes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be brief. I was just curious if the Planning Commission has requested to form an energy committee or not. I understand that Almena has formed one, and they are working on this, even though they don't have any developers knocking at their door or anything. But they're quite concerned that they're literally 32 feet away from the Oshtemo one on South Van Cal Street, so they are in front of it. I understand that if the Planning Commission made that request, that this would be the board that would approve them to be able to form that committee. And my second unrelated item is we've had a couple people that have asked. I know on Thursday we've got the Kroger presentation developer thing coming in. I don't know that much about it. I know that Katie Meyer certainly does. I've had quite a few people ask me what I know about it. I was here for the July 24th, 2025 Planning Commission meeting. I know that there was extensive talk then, and it was very much against Kroger coming in. The whole change over to the mixed use was so that we could have more houses there. We were trying to meet housing goals, and now instead we're going to cut more houses off that, and we're still going to try to shove Kroger through there. This would be, I believe, the third zoning change on it. So my request is for that 7/24 of 25 meeting to be put back on the website. That recording is missing. People are quite upset that they can't watch that. The meeting minutes are quite brief, and they certainly didn't cover the discussion that happened in that meeting.
You mean the PMN recording?
Yes, that nobody can find it. It's not out on any of the archives either. So a couple people have requested that, and I do know that was a very important meeting, especially with Thursday. So, thank you.
Right now after the meeting,
Thank you.
on July 24th.
Yeah, 7/24/25. Is there any other public comment this evening? Okay, we'll close public comment and we'll move into board member comments and committee updates. We'll start with, we'll go to the right today. Trustee Ford.
I think we have a police committee meeting tomorrow?
Yep.
Okay, so maybe the next meeting.
Trustee Sikora?
Thank you. On January 29th, I attended the Cemetery's Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting. There was a good presentation by Rich Belair, our Media and Communications Manager, about the development of a theme for the township signs, since there's such a wide variety being used. The presentation led to a discussion about replacing the sign on the West Main at the west entrance. That led to an unfortunate misunderstanding about something I said, and I take responsibility for that. Consequently, I followed up with some of the meeting attendees to better understand what happened and to explain what the discussion was about. And based on the workload of that committee, I suggest that the committee meet more often, perhaps even monthly, during certain times of the year to help us understand what is occurring, what is needed, and how we can help facilitate getting things accomplished through that committee. Unrelated to that, we're finalizing our band selections for the Summer's Music in the Park series and hope to have contracts signed within the next week or so. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Sikora. Trustee Cole?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on some of the public comment that just occurred. And I'll reiterate again, and I don't know what the process needs to be for it to happen, but again, I do believe we need to collaborate with other jurisdictions. I know that you said last time that, I believe you said Portage was possibly putting something together, I can't recall, which.
I reached out to the county and asked them to take the lead on a town hall of some sort, but haven't heard back.
Okay. I mean, the lead that, you know, the member of the public comment, sorry, that spoke, maybe they could speak at that we could all benefit from. And I also liked your comment, wherever she is, I liked your comment about, you know, us coming together and doing this together, because we see the conflict that is happening, and not only here, but in other jurisdictions because of these facilities and things that are happening. And I think that we have an opportunity to set the example and lead the way for other local municipalities that are going to be dealing with this and trying to figure out how to navigate with the public. Like, we have members that are here all the time that have all of this information, and they're here and they're invested, and they're like, we want to help, we want to, you know, help us help you. And I parrot what you said, why wouldn't we take advantage of that? So I'll just say it again, I don't know what needs to happen to make that happen, but I really hope that we can get into that direction very, very quickly. And then I'll just end with, I've realized today that we are very much fully into pothole season here, so y'all keep safe driving on the roads. And the people in front of you may not be drunk drivers, they are just dodging the Michigan potholes, because they are everywhere right now. That's all.
Thank you, Trustee Cole. Trustee Chapman?
Thank you. The Planning Commission is going to be meeting on Thursday, and what you just brought up, I will be bringing up on Thursday. And yes, we will be discussing again Croker. But before that, on Wednesday, the Environmental Health Advisory Committee that I sit on is going to be meeting tomorrow. And one of the topics is battery electric storage systems. We will be meeting with and discussing with Taylor Van Winkle from the Kalamazoo County Climate Sustainability. She is the Climate Sustainability Coordinator. So there should be a lively discussion, and I will bring that information back to the board. But I want to say to the public, I appreciate the comments, and I very much look forward to working with the community and trying to come up with some way through the Planning Commission to have a subcommittee so that we can get on board and work together. The comments tonight were all very well done. Everybody's been very respectful. I really appreciate that. We all have the same goal. It's just, how do we get there? And I think we need a bigger conversation about how we get there, because there's quite a bit of confusion, but I think that multiple minds will produce a better product than just a few. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Trustee Chapman. Treasurer Bushka?
Thank you. So I actually missed the last county treasurers meeting and PMN meeting due to weather. So there'll be another public media meeting this month. There is still the struggle with the diminishing subscribers for cable. So they're losing a lot of their getting their pass-through fees, and that's resulting in brainstorming as to how to come up with other revenue to kind of offset that. As far as taxes go, I'm a little surprised we still have just over 14 million to collect in the next 3 weeks. It's a lot, but we collect a lot, over 70,000 or 70 million. So the dates this year, for anybody that's listening, they're a little off. Usually the last day for payment without penalty is the 15th. It's a Sunday, and then we're closed Monday the 16th. But the last day without penalty is the 17th. And then bills will not go to the county until March 3rd, because we'll take payments through the 2nd, because the 1st is also a weekend. So that's my update for that, and I'm sure we'll get on the ball and get things collected and not have to pass too much on.
Thank you, Treasurer. Clerk Farmer?
Yes. So this will be a busy election year for my office. We have our regular August and November gubernatorial primary and election this year. But before that, we have our biannual training for election workers that will occur this summer, likely in July. And I want to encourage members of the public to apply. I am in particular need of Republican election workers. That tends to be a need that we have all the time. And so I encourage any Republicans who want to be involved in the community and work elections to apply and go through the training. We have positions available in the precincts, and we also have positions available in the absentee counting board that will be here in this room. And before that training, we will have a small May election. Kay Risa will have a question on the ballot, and that will affect precincts 3 through 9. If there are any questions, I'm available for that, but we're moving forward, and the precinct chairs are contacting their workers right now to get everybody on board for the election, so we'll see. That will be before the election commission, which I've been holding before these meetings. That'll happen in the next month. And that's all I have.
Time she's a-flying. From the supervisor's office to share, the Board of Review will begin its work next month in March. The South Drake Corridor Improvement Authority meets next week here, and that's the TIF area we have along Drake Road to do primarily safety improvements along that corridor. The Kalamazoo Regional Water and Wastewater Commission, the negotiations are ongoing, and my thanks to Attorney Porter and Public Works Director for their valuable input on making sure that those negotiations move along so that all users of the system will be treated fairly. I've begun the process of scheduling interviews for the Planning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals appointments. As a reminder, that appointment recommendation comes from the supervisor and comes to the board asking for your vote. The HR Board Work Group has been, we had a long meeting the other day. There's a lot going on. Policy improvements we're hoping to bring forward in 2026. So lots going on there. At the supervisors meeting next week, there will be a presentation on brownfield redevelopment. I believe it's, I can't think of her name, Macy? It's Macy, yeah. Yeah, Macy Walters. So we've already had done some of that work as we were able to offer some, what's the name of those? The name of the, what did we offered 2 of them last year, one for Maple, or one for here. So it's a training on how to use the different tools that are available to help encourage development. So anyway, be a good refresher. The police committee is meeting tomorrow. On that note, we had a very good conversation with the sheriff's department last week. And so more to come on that, but that work has begun in earnest. The Kalamazoo Event Center Assessment District, which the first project is the youth sports complex. I had a conversation with Jane Ghosh from Discover Kalamazoo and have invited Jane to come to a board meeting and do an update of the project. So there will be some opportunity for you to see the draft site plan and ask some questions. I'm attending a Michigan Association of Planning webinar on data centers later this week, just to start doing my own research. I've been working with the department heads internally, discussing local district projects that we might lift up through our Kalamazoo delegate to the state. And I also attended a training, not a training, a webinar, a Zoom with Senator Gary Peters' office on how to do congressional budget requests as well as other granting opportunities that might be available to us through federal partners. And other than that, not much going on here in Oshtemo. So with that, we will call this meeting adjourned, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you. No, I brought.